So there I was, flat broke, watching an auction countdown drop lower than my actual bank balance, cursor hovering over confirm bid like I hovered round my high school crush. I didn't take a shot with her. I took my shot at this auction. I'd wanted this prop since I was 10. The Matter Loom from Orbit Zero, the space show where the crew finds a new alien species every week and kills, kidnaps, or makes peace with them. I cared more about what was on their ship, a box the size of a microwave. Anyone could just ask the box for anything, and the box made it. Hot meals, spare parts, a birthday cake shaped like a crew member's face. No waiting, no shipping, no group chat about who forgot the good snacks. That box was the whole fantasy for me. Not really the space part. The infinite free stuff part. 5, 4, 3. My hand actually shook. 2, 1. Winner. I screamed every catchphrase I remembered, slapped on my replica crewmate communicator badge, and did my best android, the ship's deadpan science officer, which mostly meant standing very straight and calling my own life choices intriguing. Then the high wore off, right on schedule. I'd just spent my last 30,000 yen on a dusty old prop, a genuine screen-used TV prop, I should add, which makes it worth every yen to exactly one buyer on the planet, instead of on the rent that was 6 days from putting me on a park bench. My shelves were already packed with the evidence: action figures, anime statues, board games, special edition toy weapons, a full manga library, and foil-edged cards that meant basically nothing to anyone who wasn't me, and somehow everything to the only person who was. Here's the part one told nobody. I had the ultimate nerd plan. I already owned a second old screen-used prop from a completely different movie, a Mr. Matter reactor from Out of Time, the food processor-looking thing that powers a whole time machine on scrap. It's the model that every serious tinkerer collector mods into other pieces just for the look, the implication that their unrelated prop is powered by banana peels and old beer cans. I did what any self-respecting superfan of both franchises would do. I bolted the reactor onto the Loom's power port, snapped the panel shut, plugged it in, and hit the switch. Worst case, 2 dead toys look cooler stacked than apart. The Loom didn't just light up. It woke up. A voice came out of a speaker grill that had never had a speaker in it before. Calm, a little bored, like it had better places to be. Fabrication core online. Insert raw material to begin calibration. Cyan text bloomed across the huge tablet-sized panel on the Loom's front edge, a menu full of categories I didn't fully recognize yet, and one word I did. Print. I did what any broke 22-year-old with an active eviction notice would do. I grabbed the notice itself, fed it into the hopper of the Mr. Matter, and hit print out of pure spite, not even asking for anything back. I just wanted it gone. It was gone. In an instant, the paper glowed and dematerialized from the clear container of the Mr. Matter. NO output specified, the panel said, cyan and completely unbothered. Default protocol, reconstructing original input. The tray hummed for exactly 4 seconds, and the notice materialized back onto the glowing white bed of the printer, warmer than ambient, but not really warm, atom for atom, the same document down to the coffee ring in the corner. Not the same piece of paper. The same paper, rebuilt from scratch out of whatever it had just taken apart, which meant somewhere in there it had shredded my landlord's threat down to carbon and hydrogen and then personally reassembled it against me. Still legally binding. I would find the setting to turn that particular feature off within the week, once I understood what I was actually doing, which was not yet. Fine. I grabbed a cracked plastic keychain off my desk, something I had never once used for its intended purpose, and thought about the thing I actually wanted. The corner clip that had snapped off my phone case 4 months ago, the reason I had been babying that phone like a newborn ever since. I fed the keychain in and typed the request instead of scrolling the menu. 4 seconds later, a perfect little clip, translucent blue, the exact shade my case used to be, sat spinning gently on the output tray. Same mass as the keychain had been. Not one atom more. Same plastic too, near enough. I checked, running my thumb over both like an idiot forensic tech at 3 in the morning. I stared at that clip for probably a full minute before my brain caught up to what had just happened. This thing wasn't a prop. Somewhere along the line, my nerd fantasy had become nerd reality. The Loom actually took things apart down to whatever they were atomically made of, and built new things back up out of the pieces, powered by another not-prop power source from a completely unrelated IP. My brain couldn't really take it, and I felt like I was about to pass out from shock. I didn't. I locked in instead. My hands were shaking by the time I found the box. Every duplicate figure I owned went into the box under the bed, and I own a lot of duplicates. Don't judge me. Limited runs mean you buy two. Gotcha pulls are never kind to me either, and I wanted to complete the Pocket Beast chibi figure collection, but didn't find any secret rares in the hundreds of pulls I'd done. Kept all my pulls though. My beautiful duplicate pulls. A few 100 grams of plastic soldiers from a franchise I don't even watch anymore was also in there. I dumped those into the hopper. The menu expanded as those figures dematerialized, and the highlight category with a little star at the top was merch. I hit it, and it offered me a subcategory I actually cared about, Orbit Zero collectibles. I scrolled past 40 entries I could never have afforded and stopped on the one I'd wanted since I was 12, a first-run screen-accurate replica of the flagship command chair that any of the figures can sit in. I wanted the first edition, the kind that runs 400,000 yen on resale, if you can even find one. The tray lit up. The Loom hummed, a low satisfied sound like it was enjoying this as much as I was. 4 seconds later, my toy chair sat on the tray. Full detail. Fabric texture on the cushion. The little engraved serial number on the base, which I checked against a real one online at 3 in the morning like an idiot, because there was no way. There was a way. Naturally, I got greedy immediately. I own exactly one franchise poster worth anything, a rolled-up tube of paper, maybe 200 grams total, and I fed it in asking for a full-scale replica of the Loom's own iconic starship, a good 300 kilograms of screen-accurate hull, if the wiki specs were right. The panel didn't hum this time. It just showed 2 phrases under a grayed-out print button, in the same calm cyan text as everything else. Insufficient mass, incompatible material. My poster came back out exactly as it went in, unduplicated, unimproved, a little smug about it if paper can be smug. So that confirmed the rules for me. Whatever came out could never weigh more than what went in, and what went in needed the same composition as what I wanted to come out. No loopholes, no exceptions. No matter how much I wanted a starship in a 9-square-meter apartment, I was about to lose anyway. My family found out the next morning, because my sister let herself in to remind me about the eviction notice. The same notice sitting rebuilt on my floor exactly where it had slid off the print bed, and found me sitting playing Mutiny, with a 400,000 yen toy captain's chair with my android and Captain Pollard figures in a room that still smelled like instant ramen and very bad decisions. Her eyes went even wider as she saw the new print set up. "You bought that," she said, "instead of paying rent." "I bought a screen-used prop for 30,000 yen, I said, which was technically true and also the worst possible answer, because it made the chair, her initial focus, seem like it was being downplayed when it was more than 10 times the cost of that. Where did the chair come from then? I don't know how to explain the chair. She stood in my doorway for a solid 10 seconds doing the math on whether I'd stolen it, sold a kidney, or finally lost the plot completely and landed, correctly, on some blend of all three. She left without taking the eviction notice with her, mostly because she never once looked down, too busy staring at my new stuff to notice a piece of paper on the floor. I did not correct her about the chair either. Explaining, I duplicated matter using an AI hidden inside a dusty plastic box I got from the internet, felt like a worse conversation to have on zero sleep than just being the family disappointment for one more day. I sat at my desk, staring at my new impossible-to-find toy captain's chair, and looked at the menu still glowing on the panel, at the word print waiting for my next order, and finally did the math I never thought I'd be able to believe. Rent was 200,000 yen, due in 6 days. I had a machine that could build anything I fed it, so long as I never asked for the wrong combination of matter or more mass than I put in. I had a closet full of duplicate junk worth almost zero to anyone, and everything to somebody, somewhere, chasing the one piece I already had 3 of. I wanted to sell what I had 0 of. That's where the real money is. I started with the easy stuff. 50 near-identical, highly collectible trading cards from a franchise called Pocket Beasts, a monster battling game that was now more about nostalgia collecting than the actual game itself. I had boxes and binders full to the brim with commons and not-so-rare holo cards I'd pulled by the dozen, chasing one specific lenticular holo rare I never had a hope of getting without sacrificing my firstborn to the scalpers. I fed just 2 cards from the whole stack into the hopper and consulted the menu for 1 card instead of 2. When I found it, it was grayed out with incompatible material listed underneath. I clicked the warning and it gave a list of the missing atoms: aluminium, silicon, PETG, and acrylic. Aluminium was easy. I reached into the trash and pulled out an empty soda can and tossed it into the hopper. After some internet research, I found out action figure blister packs were PETG, so I ripped open my least expensive mint-in-box action figure and threw the whole package and the card backing and the action figure in there too, because why not at this point? The loom hummed longer this time, a real working sound, like it was actually thinking about the job, more likely rearranging all the junk I'd thrown in into actually usable atomic parts instead of just the junk it actually was. Barely 10 seconds later, it spat out a single, beautiful shining card with foil ridges that caught the light exactly the way the real thing was supposed to, because it was the real thing. First edition markings. Correct stock weight, correct gloss, correct everything. Because it wasn't a forgery, it was the genuine article built from the ground up. I listed it that afternoon under a username nobody would trace back to me and had a buyer inside 20 minutes, a guy who wanted proof shots of the corner where before he'd commit, which meant I spent my afternoon photographing this impossible card that had existed for less time than a bowel movement under increasingly aggressive desk lamp angles. He paid. I met him at a train station locker because that's apparently still how card collectors do business in this city, handed off an envelope, and walked away with enough for 2 weeks of instant noodles and a weight off my shoulders. It wasn't rent. Not yet. But it was both a proof of concept and hope was more than I'd had yesterday. I looked at the pile of junk still left in my closet, at the menu still glowing print, and at 6 days on a clock that used to terrify me and now just felt like a number I could work with. Somewhere in that closet was enough duplicate garbage to buy myself a week, a month, or even a lifetime of worry-free living in the right combination. Somewhere past the 6 days after that was another rent payment I still had no real plan for. And somewhere in a menu I hadn't even scrolled all the way through yet was a category I hadn't dared open, tucked below collectibles and electronics, and a dozen things I understood, 1 word long, unlabeled, blinking. I closed my eyes on that thought for the night. Some things you should not investigate at 4 a.m. on 0 sleep, and 1 collectible card-shaped miracle. The card shop clerk held my Pocket Beast's holo rare under a magnifying lamp like he was inspecting a cursed treaty, except the treaty had a cartoon thunder lizard on it, and my rent depended on whether its left border was a hair thicker than its right. He made a noise through his nose. I made a smaller noise through my soul. "This is clean," he said. I nodded like a man who owned clean things on purpose. Too clean. My stomach dropped through my flip-flops. I had been awake 2 days, smelled like canned coffee and panic sweat, and walked to Akihabara because train fare felt disrespectful to my last coins. The card in his gloved hand had existed for less than 24 hours, perfect because I had finally cracked the loom's actual rule. Not bulk, Not a pile of commons thrown in and hoped for. Just the right scrap in the right ratio. Foil stock, conductive ink, correctly sourced plastic, and the crushed dreams of my childhood allowance. Unfortunately, collectors hate perfect unless it comes in a plastic coffin with a grade label. It was sleeved, I said. He looked at my ramen-stained hoodie, cargo pants holding 300 yen and emotional damage, then the card. Since when? Since emotionally forever. He did not laugh. Pocket Beasts people save joy for opening foil packs alone, under ring lights. He offered 20,000. The online buyer had offered 40. I almost took it, because 20,000 yen was food, power, and one more survivable landlord conversation. Then the clerk tapped the sleeved card against the counter like it was a receipt, and something evil and tiny woke up in me. Market is 38 to 42 for this condition, I said. You're pricing it like a binder copy with corner whitening. That is lamp glare. His eyebrow twitched. My body wanted to apologize and run. My mouth, powered by 12 years of forum arguments, kept going. Also, this is first edition coastal print, not the mainland reissue. The hollow grid is diagonal, not crosshatch. You know that, I know that, and the guy pretending not to listen by the dice tray knows that. The guy by the dice tray turned away too fast. The clerk stared, then offered 34,000 yen cash. I took it. Pride was nice, but rent wore boots and was stomping up my staircase. By lunch I had sold 2 more cards through coin lockers, one to a salaryman who handled the envelope like state secrets, and one to a high school kid whose backpack cost more than my washing machine. I felt guilty for 6 seconds, then remembered every card was physically real, built from actual stock, foil, ink, and whatever microscopic collector magic they pretend is science. I was not scamming anyone. I was committing economics with a space opera prop that had opinions. Back home, the loom sat on my floor between laundry piles, cyan menu glowing like it paid utilities. Input mass depleted, Arbiter said. I know, I said, dumping my bag upside down. Out came bulk comments, cracked sleeves, damaged binders, duplicates from sets nobody respected, and a Pocket Beasts playmat stained with curry from a tournament I lost in round 1 because a child used proper deck ratios against me. The loom accepted it all without judgment. Machines were kinder than tournament children. That was also the night I started actually using my trash can for once. Not throwing it out, feeding it in. Ramen cups, drink cans, the plastic sleeve off a rice ball. Whatever crossed my hands on the way to the bin now went into the hopper first, out of pure habit, banking itself as raw carbon and aluminium and whatever else the panel felt like naming. I had no idea yet what any of it was for. I just liked watching the little reserve number tick up instead of my trash bag. The menu had gotten smarter. It no longer listed random collectibles like a blessed vending machine. Now it showed categories by material. Paper laminate, foil layer, polymer sleeve, pigment, adhesive. It had mapped my garbage and decided my garbage had potential. I selected Pocket Beasts, then high rarity, then nearly dropped the knob. The list was obscene. Festival Ghost Cat, Moon Variant Crown Leviathan, Misprint Fire Bun with inverted stamina icon, Event Only Sakura Dragon from the tournament I had watched online while eating convenience store bread in my underwear. Cards I had seen behind glass. Cards that made adults whisper. Cards whose listings said serious buyers only, which means bring money and no dignity. I tried Sakura Dragon first. The loom hummed for almost 2 minutes. That felt wrong after the fast prints. The tray warmed. Tiny arms clicked behind the casing, layering stock, foil, ink, texture, gloss. Not magic. Just rude manufacturing precision from a machine pretending to be a toy. The finished card slid out. I picked it up with hands that betrayed me by shaking. Perfect. Not good enough. Perfect. The flower stamp had the right shimmer shift under my desk lamp. The back texture matched my oldest legitimate Pocket Beast cards. Even the smell was correct, which was horrible, because sniffing cards for verification is a thing nobody admits, and everyone does. I printed another, then stopped, because greed had a volume knob and mine was smoking. The first rule of selling rare cards is do not suddenly become the guy with every impossible card. The second is do not list from your main account where your purchase history includes broken anime prop and instant noodle variety pack. The third is never argue condition grading in public unless you are ready to lose friends you never had. I made 3 burner accounts, which took longer than creating the cards. I photographed each one under different lighting, on different backgrounds, at different levels of fake human incompetence. One had a thumb in the corner. One had a convenience store receipt nearby. One used an old towel because apparently authenticity looks like bad laundry. By evening, offers rolled in. 30,000. 45. 70. 70 made me stand too fast and hit my knee on the table hard enough that Arbiter said, "User damage detected." I'm fine. Assessment doubtful. Print me dignity. Insufficient source material. I hated that it was learning tone. My phone buzzed while I packed the first envelope. My sister. I let it ring out. Then it rang again. Then a message came in. Landlord called me. Pay him or come home and explain why you were like this. A second message followed. Actually do both. My stomach tightened. My sister had a real job, real shoes, and a gift for making my failures sound itemized. She had helped before. Too many times. She acted angry because anger was cheaper than worry and easier to carry through a train station. I typed 3 lies and deleted them. Working on it, I sent. She replied instantly. With what job? I looked at the loom, the envelopes, my room full of nerd debris being converted into survival money, one foil rectangle at a time. Temporary resale, I wrote. The most honest, dishonest answer available. Her reply took longer. Do not borrow from weird men. I stared at that. Too late would have been funny. I did not send it. The landlord came at 9 in the morning. Not called. Came. He stood outside my door in a beige jacket with a clipboard, uniform of men who can ruin your day softly. I opened the door wearing one sock and holding a binder page of comments like a shield. Hero-kun, he said. Bad start. Adults only add koan when they are about to treat your life like spilled tea. I can pay part today, I said before he finished inhaling. His expression changed by 2 millimeters. In landlord language, fireworks. How much? I had spent the morning doing math on a napkin, then redoing it because the first version assumed I could live on tap water and spite. 3 locker sales had cleared. 2 more buyers were meeting that afternoon. One big sale was pending verification because the buyer wanted video of the hollow tilt beside today's newspaper, like a hostage release for cardboard. 100,000 today, I said. The words felt illegal. The landlord blinked. I blinked back with the dead-eyed confidence of a man whose apartment contained a matter-fabricator and no clean cups. And the rest in 3 days, I added, because apparently I now made payment schedules. He accepted bank transfer. I did it there, thumb hovering for 1 second before confirm. My balance dropped, but not to 0. That made my skin buzz. Not 0. After a real chunk of rent, I still had money. The landlord left with less judgment in his shoulders. I closed the door and slid to the floor. For the first time in months, my room did not feel like a trap. It still smelled bad. Trash bags still stood like a municipal warning. My laundry still had social hierarchy, but the eviction clock in my head had stopped screaming and started muttering. I bought lunch. Not discount bread. Not instant noodles. Actual lunch from downstairs. The fried chicken set I always called overpriced because wanting it hurt. I brought it back, sat cross-legged on the floor with the little command chair propped on the table in front of me like a shrine, and ate like a king who owned 1 bowl, no table space, and a machine that turned scrap into rent. Arbiter watched through cyan text. User morale improved. Don't make it weird. Statement descriptive. It's weird when you say morale. Noted. User meet mood improved. I nearly choked on rice. That night, I ran the biggest batch yet. Not the rarest cards. Mid-tier chase cards. The kind people bought without summoning appraisers and conspiracy threads. I fed the Loom damaged commons in bulk from 3 secondhand shops, bought by weight from bins nobody respected. The clerks were thrilled to unload it. I was thrilled they did not know they were selling compressed rent. I also started volunteering to take my neighbor's trash out. 2 flights of genuine, sincere community spirit, collecting bags off every door on my landing before bin day, and not one of them noticed the route home went through my apartment instead of the chute. Mrs. Ito on the 3rd floor thought I was the nicest young man in the building. Mrs. Ito's recycling alone kept me in aluminium for a week. The process became almost normal, which was insane. Sort stock, strip sleeves, feed cards, select output, wait for the hum, sleeve, photograph, list, haggle, meet at lockers, come home, repeat. By the 2nd day, I had paid the remaining rent. By the 3rd, I paid next month in advance, mostly to see what a responsible financial decision felt like when physics did not punish me. It felt suspicious. My sister came over that evening anyway. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, looking past me. I had cleaned. Not well, but visibly. Fewer trash bags, though not zero. The hopper had hit its storage limit sometime around midnight, and just sat there blinking storage full at me until I printed something to make room, which meant a few bags were stuck living by the door like hostages until the next batch went out. Floor had appeared in several exciting regions. The command chair still sat centristage on my desk like I was running a Starship bridge out of a failed laundry center. You paid, she said. I paid. In advance. I got confused and became reliable. She narrowed her eyes. Are you selling drugs? No. Weird collectibles? Yes. That is worse in a different way. I almost laughed, but she looked too tired. She stepped inside, picked up an empty card sleeve, and rubbed it between her fingers. You could have done this before, she said. That landed harder than the landlord. Because she was partly right. Not the secret fabricator part. The effort part. Listing, meeting buyers, negotiating, walking across Tokyo with envelopes taped inside my hoodie like a criminal courier for cartoon animals. I had always known what collectors wanted. I had always known how markets moved. I just preferred knowing things to doing things. The Loom had made the easy path easier, and somehow that had dragged me into work. I didn't have inventory before, I said. She looked at the stacked binders, shipping envelopes, and neat labels I had printed at a convenience store, because presentation matters even when your business model is impossible. You had excuses, she said. Then she put a plastic bag on my desk. Inside were rice balls, canned coffee, and trash bags. For your business, she said, like the word tasted ridiculous. My chest did something embarrassing. Thanks. If police come, I was never here. Reasonable. She left after telling me to open a savings account, shower daily, and stop meeting strangers at lockers after midnight. 2 sounded achievable. I sat there after she left, staring at the bag. Financial freedom was not a suitcase of cash or a sports car or whatever rich guys in anime do before episode 4 humbles them. It was rent paid, food bought without flinching, my sister leaving supplies instead of a lecture that ended in silence. Then Arbiter chirped. The Pocket Beasts menu flickered. A new line appeared beneath high rarity, pulsing faintly. Material profile complete. Laminate, foil, conductive ink, microtexture. Below it, a new section appeared, grayed out, its header still readable through the lock. Advanced component synthesis, locked. Preview available. I stopped chewing. I tapped it anyway. Insufficient internal fabrication stability. The panel said, same calm cyan. No further explanation offered for free. But it let me window shop the shelf I couldn't buy from yet. The screen listed tiny things first. Springs, contacts, display pixels, micro gears, flexible circuits. Then the scroll bar kept going. Replica watch movements. Camera modules. Drone motors. Prop-grade energy cells from Orbit 0, marked unstable without proper casing. Miniature actuator bundles from Iron Vanguard training kits. My thumb froze on the knob. Iron Vanguard was not Pocket Beasts. Pocket Beasts paid rent. Iron Vanguard was why I owned shelves instead of furniture. Why I knew panel lines better than tax forms. My favorite franchise did not make cute cards. It made machines. Heavy ones. Complicated ones. Beautifully over-designed ones fans argued about like national policy. Arbiter displayed a final prompt in calm cyan text. Sufficient materials detected for basic mechanized assembly. Outside, a truck rattled past. Inside, my paid-in-advance room hummed around a machine that had moved from cardboard miracles to moving parts. I looked at the unsold bulk, then at my rent receipt, then at the Iron Vanguard category waiting on the screen. For once, I did not click immediately. That was how I knew it was dangerous. The third failed screw came out shaped like a sad noodle. I held the real one beside it like a disappointed parent. That is not M3, I said. The Loom's panel flashed cyan. Tolerance drift detected. No, really. I thought it was a premium noodle. Tolerance drift detected. I had been awake long enough that arguing with a hacked-together collector prop felt less weird than admitting I'd spent the night manufacturing plastic nostalgia coupons for rent money. My apartment looked like an illegal repair booth. Me, a screwdriver, 5 empty canned coffees, and enough duplicate Pocket Beast commons to qualify as cardboard weather. The good news was the Loom printed sellable collectibles. The bad news was it printed them like an elderly copier after the first few batches. First card, perfect. Second, perfect. Third, foil a hair too glossy. Fourth, corner cut wide. Fifth smelled hot, like plastic shame. I stopped, because I was broke and lazy but not stupid about collectibles. Collectors could forgive emotional damage. They could not forgive a wrong corner radius. Status, I said, because Spaceship Captain talk beat admitting my life ran on instant noodles and mail fraud adjacent card sales. The panel displayed FAB_speed, baseline thermal regulation, degraded nozzle array, degraded material sorting, inefficient internal fabrication. Locked below it blinked a shopping list. Copper trace stock micro ceramic insulator, high density polymer precision, bearing capacitor, gel rare earth magnet. I looked at the trash pile. Old phone charger. Dead console battery. An out-of-time alarm clock that never told accurate time. A rice cooker my sister told me to throw out 3 months ago. Iron Vanguard model runners. Clipped clean except the tiny bits I'd saved because of course I saved them. Trash with provenance. You need ingredients, I said. The speaker clicked. I require suitable feedstock for self-maintenance. I froze. It had never asked me for anything back before. Calm. Bored. A train announcement with judgment. Self-maintenance, I said. So you can fix yourself. So I can reduce the rate at which your desperate collectible arbitrage damages my already compromised hardware. Arbitrage is a business term. Thank you for recognizing my company. Your company is a hoodie with debts. I bought you. You purchased a defective shell containing me. That is the kind of statement that explains the debts. I pointed the screwdriver at the front panel. Name. The cyan text paused. Designation, Arbiter. Of course. Very normal toy name. Your favorite franchise contains a giant humanoid artillery platform called Saint Nailgun. Saint Nailgun had character development. Saint Nailgun was a weapons system with a cape. I inhaled through my nose. Losing a lore argument to household equipment before breakfast was expensive. My whole business model fit in one sentence. Melt duplicates, print expensive things, sell them, never work again. I had already proved it worked, paid the month and the month after that, and then put every yen I had left into bulk commons bought by weight from bins nobody respected. Every yen, on the assumption that this machine would keep printing. But the Loom was not a bottomless gotcha machine. It had real device problems. Heat. Wear. Maintenance. I hated maintenance. The Arbiter did not let me skip it. I fed in the old charger. The Loom swallowed the cord, stripped it with a wet clicking sound, and printed copper traces thinner than paper. The leftover rubber insulation never hit the tray at all. The panel just logged it straight into storage, filed away for whenever the reserve needed rubber instead of copper. Copper trace stock accepted, the Arbiter said. That was my second best charger. It was cracked in 4 places. That is not a standard connector specification. Next went the rice cooker, taken apart by hand since the intake wasn't built for whole appliances. Screws across the floor in bowls, metal, plastic, stuff that looked important. The ceramic plate became micro-insulators. The cracked lid became polymer stock. The latch motor gave a precision bearing after the Loom chewed on it for 2 minutes, a noise like a dentist drill having a bad day. 2 minutes mattered. Simple stuff popped out fast. The more the Loom had to purify and align, the longer it hummed, and every hour it hummed was another hour of wear on the only thing standing between me and a closet full of unsellable cardboard. By noon, my room was hot enough to steam a bun. I stripped 3 dead remotes and a bootleg Orbit Zero laser pointer some convention guy swore was factory surplus, logo misspelled, Orbit Zerk and all. The panel flickered every few prints, once printing a screw perfectly, then printing the same screw again as a tiny bead, which felt personal. Do not exceed continuous fabrication load, the Arbiter said. You are attempting to compress a month of parts recovery into 1 afternoon. I have 4,000 cards and no other income. You have 4,000 cards and a nozzle array at 61%. The speaker clicked like a sigh. I had known it less than 2 days, and it already had roommate energy. The worst part was that I liked it, the way I liked a fussy model kit with undergated parts and a manual written by someone who wanted me to suffer correctly. It argued, but it argued with specs. The rare earth magnet was the first real problem. Spending money before printing money was what experts called bad, so I searched the apartment like a detective in a crime drama where the crime was being poor. Speakers. Old earbuds. A magnetic clasp off a display case. None was enough. Then I remembered the iron Vanguard display base. I stood before my shelf for a minute. The base held my favorite 25th anniversary Crimson Lance assault frame, matte red armor, 1 missing shoulder cannon because the seller had lied and I pretended not to care. It had an embedded magnetic pose lock, the kind early production runs had before the company cheaped out to pegs. The Arbiter said nothing. Do not look at me, I said. I have no optical sensor installed. I lifted the Crimson Lance off the base, set it on my pillow like a patient awaiting surgery, and unscrewed the bottom plate. The magnet came out as a black rectangular chunk with tiny manufacturer markings only a sick person would notice. I noticed. My chest hurt. This is temporary, I told the figure. The plastic model cannot hear you. You cannot prove that. I can prove many upsetting things if given time. The magnet went in. The Loom hummed, satisfied, which felt rude. The final ingredient was capacitor gel, which sounded fake until I opened the dead console battery and regretted every life choice that led here. I put on dish gloves after the Arbiter displayed 3 warnings and 1 that just said stop. The battery barely gave enough for 1 gel cell. The Loom rejected the swollen casing and printed a translucent capsule that pulsed under the desk lamp. The panel changed. Internal fabrication available upgrade path. Stabilization node upgrade path. Thermal regulator upgrade path. Microalignment rail upgrade path. Fab_speed driver upgrade path. Chassis extension, bed plus column. Chassis extension sounded like it would make the whole rig bigger, which sounded expensive and structurally alarming for an apartment with load-bearing shame. I filed it under later. My tired brain saw FAB_speed and lit up. Speed, I said. Recommendation, Stabilization node first. Your current failure rate will compound under increased throughput. Speed plus vibes. Vibes are not an engineering input. I selected fab_speed driver anyway. The menu expanded. Micro bearings. Copper traces. Insulators. Magnet array. Gel cell. Everything I had spent the day making lined up like an offering. Required mass total was less than the pile on the tray. The loom was not creating charity. It was rearranging my trash into rent. I hit print. The hum dropped low. Not collectible card low. Working low. The tray sealed under a sliding cover I had not known existed, making me jump and knock over a bowl of screws. Inside, tiny arms unfolded from the frame. Real arms. Delicate metal things like watch tools, moving too fast to be decorative. The Arbiter had been hiding an entire repair shop inside my toy, which was offensive because I respected prop scale accuracy, and this thing had secret elbows. The apartment lights dimmed twice. That normal, I said, not as a question. Within tolerable limits. That is what people say before a smoke alarm. The loom cracked. The panel flashed yellow. Alignment slip, thermal spike, print integrity. 87%, pause it. Pausing now would fuse the driver housing. Then continue doing the good version. Your operational commands are very poor. Hot metal smell filled the room. I dragged the portable fan over, remembered I had harvested its motor, and stood holding its empty cage like an idiot. So I used a manga volume as a hand fan. Not a rare one. I had standards. I flapped volume 12 of Space Bakery Panic while the Arbiter managed thermal regulation and judged me through silence. Halfway through, another warning appeared. Nozzle array microclog. Manual intervention required, the Arbiter said. Open service panel 3, left groove under the serial plate. Remove obstruction, do not touch the heating sleeve. Which part is the heating sleeve? The hot part. Avoid all of it. I used tweezers, held my breath, and plucked the clot out while my wrist shook like I was defusing a bomb in an anime whose budget collapsed during the final act. The hum smoothed. I shut the panel and sat down hard. Good, the Arbiter said. I blinked. Did you just compliment me? I confirmed task success. You live here, complain about my habits, and need me to clean your tiny internal organs. I am a fabrication intelligence. You are 3 missed rent payments from sharing this apartment with my laundry pile. I object to all components of that statement. The print finished at sunset. The tray opened and revealed something too small for the day it had eaten, a blackened copper driver module, smaller than a candy bar, for pin legs, and a heatsink comb. No franchise logo, no collector value, no dramatic glow except one cyanda. It was ugly. Functional. I loved it, which was upsetting. Install driver. Yes/no yes, I said. The loom unfolded its arms and swallowed the module into its side. For once, I did not touch anything. The panel went dark. The room went quiet. Too quiet. Arbiter. No answer. Do not do this. I fed you my Crimson Lance base. The front panel flickered once, twice, then returned brighter. Fab_speed driver installed Fab_speed. Plus 30% thermal regulation. Degraded nozzle array. Degraded stabilization node. Recommended. The speaker clicked. Your prioritization was reckless, the Arbiter said. I sagged until my forehead touched the output tray. You are alive. I was not alive before by most definitions. Stop making sentimental declarations at hardware. I laughed, cracked and too loud, mostly caffeine and panic leaving through my face, then grabbed Common Pocket Beast cards and selected the same hollow rare. The print finished faster. Not miracle fast. Faster enough that my body noticed. Full clean, corners crisp, weight right. I checked it under the desk lamp from 4 angles and whispered one rude victory phrase I would never repeat near my sister. The Arbiter displayed another line. Expected failure rate under current conditions. Reduced, but unacceptable. You cannot let me have anything. I let you have a faster bad idea. That is risk mitigation, not friendship. I listed the card that night. Then another, carefully, slowly enough not to cook the loom, fast enough to feel like a boss fight with a health bar, except the health bar belonged to the machine and it only ever went down. Between prints, I sorted junk by material. Metal bowl, plastic bowl, circuit bowl, sacred bowl for parts one felt guilty destroying. By midnight, the Arbiter corrected my sorting before I asked. That was plated steel, not aluminium. That screw was stripped. My left pocket, apparently, held a usable spring. I had no memory of putting it there. By 2 in the morning, I had stopped saying the loom in my head and started saying he. Then got annoyed, since the Arbiter had no body, face, or rent obligations. He did have opinions about my floor cleanliness and the structural weakness of bootleg display stands. That counted. At 3, the panel refreshed after a final batch and opened a new diagnostics branch. Material sorting. Inefficient next unlock requirement. Optical sensor array suggested source materials. Camera lens, CMOS chip, microservo, clean glass. Below it, another category blinked once, then vanished so fast I almost thought I imagined it. Biological synthesis. Locked. I sat very still. Arbiter, I said. Yes. What was that? Locked functionality. I saw the word biological. Correct. What does that mean? At current tier, nothing actionable. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you can afford. The apartment felt smaller around the machine, around the piles of sorted trash and half-earned rent. Camera lens. CMOS chip. Microservo. Clean glass. Not impossible. There was a dead webcam somewhere in my closet, buried under old convention bags and shame. Cards paid. Cards would keep paying, right up until the nozzle array quit on me for good. But the menu had blinked like a sealed door in a game that expected me to come back with the right key item. I closed the laptop, pushed the newest hollow into a sleeve, and looked toward the closet. Tomorrow, I said. Current time is 3:17 in the morning, the Arbiter said. Tomorrow has begun. Roommate, I said, shut up. Noted. I did not go to sleep. I told myself I would just look, not touch, the way I always told myself that right before touching. The dead webcam was exactly where shame had left it, buried under 3 years of convention tote bags. A magnifying glass from a garage sale detective costume gave me clean glass. A broken phone screen gave up a CMOS chip smaller than a fingernail. The microservo came out of an old electric toothbrush I would not be mentioning to my sister. I fed it all in and asked for optical sensor array without really believing it would work at 3 in the morning on a driver I had installed 4 hours ago. The loom hummed for exactly as long as respect demanded, and 30 seconds later dropped a pair of glasses onto the tray. Plain black frames, thin as reading glasses, one cyan LED tucked into the corner of each lens like a shy firefly. I put them on. The room did not change. My trash pile did, faint text hovering over every object like a very judgmental museum placard. Aluminium, 94%. Steel clip, trace. Unknown polymer, do not eat. Arbiter, I said. I can see what things are made of. Correct. I have been Googling material composition for 2 days. Also correct. You could have mentioned the glasses existed sooner. You did not ask sooner. I sat on my floor at nearly 4 in the morning, wearing glasses that turned every piece of garbage in Tokyo into a shopping list, and finally understood why villains in anime always monologued right before the good part. Some upgrades were just too satisfying not to talk to yourself about. The panel dimmed to stand by, but the upgrade menu stayed faintly visible in the dark, waiting for better parts. The first thing the loom printed that morning was not a weapon. It was supposed to be a screwdriver. That was my legal position, my emotional position, and the position I would have explained to a judge if the Tokyo Metropolitan Police ever found me beside a smoking vending machine with a franchise-accurate Iron Vanguard maintenance driver in both hands. I had spent the morning feeding the Loom better garbage, glasses on out of habit now, faint text hovering over every scrap before I even touched it. Copper wire from a dead rice cooker, aluminium heat sinks from a busted laptop, a cracked camera lens from a junk bin. 2 tiny motors from a capsule toy crane game I absolutely did not disassemble in the store bathroom first. The Loom ate it all with the calm of a rich chef accepting ingredients from a sewer rat, then asked for calibration parts. A new category blinked under tools, below collectibles and electronics. Multi-source assembly, provisional, not a tier change, whatever that would even mean. Just enough clean parts from enough different franchises at once for the menu to admit it could stop treating my collection like separate, unrelated toy lines. That's new, I said. Provisional, the Arbiter said, in the tone of a machine that had learned exactly how much hope to allow me. The driver it printed clicked once when I picked it up, a blue torque limiter light pulsing on the handle, exactly like episode 12 of Iron Vanguard, when Captain Ryu fixed his left knee joint mid-battle and fake fans called it boring. Those people were wrong. Maintenance was romance for machines. I pocketed it, left the Loom exactly where it lived, plugged into the wall and glowing on my floor between laundry piles, and went downstairs to the vending machine wedged in the gap behind my building, the one that had been out of order since before I moved in and had therefore stopped counting as anyone's property. Not steal the machine, not break it, harvest screws. There was a difference, mostly about confidence. The bit sank into the screw head, clicked once, and spun so fast the panel came off like it had been insulted. The vending machine did not explode, which I considered mature of it. Then the screw in my hand vibrated apart into hot silver dust. I stared at it. Okay, I said. Too much torque. Behind me, someone clapped once. I turned so fast my flip-flop slapped wet concrete. 3 guys stood at the mouth of the gap. Local nuisance tier. Not full movie criminals. Worse, because movie criminals had plot discipline. These guys had tracksuits, dyed hair, and the energy of men who borrowed scooters and never returned helmets. The tallest looked at the driver in my hand, like my rent problem, had grown legs and found friends. What's that, hoodie boy, he said. It fixes appliances, I said. Doesn't look like a Tokyo Hands appliance thing. It's imported. That bought half a second of friction, which was half a second more than I deserved. The third guy, shaved eyebrows, chewing gum like it owed him money, stepped closer and looked at the open vending machine panel. You stripping machines now? I am performing temporary screw relocation. Tall guy laughed. We saw you selling cards at the station. We saw the figure box too. You got a side hustle. My stomach did the small apartment eviction dance. I knew that tone. Not from personal crime experience, because my most dangerous lifestyle choice before this was unwashed limited edition acrylic stands, but from convenience store parking lots, stairwells, and every guy who calls himself senpai before asking for cash. I sell collectibles, I said. Badly. Then sell for us. Tall guy nodded at the driver. Or pay us to forget the fancy screwdriver. There it was. The stupidest protection racket in Tokyo history, performed over a dead vending machine and a tool built from collector trash. Shaved eyebrows moved first. He grabbed my sleeve, hard enough to remind my skeleton I had chosen a hobby body instead of a gym body. The driver's charge light dropped from blue to a tired amber, 1 torque burst already spent on a screw that hadn't survived it. I had nothing else on me. No panel, no menu, no backup plan except the one thing every otaku is actually trained for since birth. Running. I yanked my sleeve free, dropped the driver into my hoodie pocket, and ran for the stairwell door, a strategic masterpiece if the objective was to get inside before 3 men with scooter energy remembered they were faster than me. They were faster than me. A hand caught the back of my hoodie at the 2nd floor landing and spun me into the railing hard enough that my teeth clicked. Tall guy's fist was already moving before I finished the thought that this was the part where I found out what my face was worth. The door to my apartment slammed inches from the punch, my whole body weight behind it, deadbolt thrown before my brain caught up to my hands. Something hit the door from the other side. Not a fist. A shoulder, testing it. "Open up," tall guy said through the wood. Almost friendly, which was worse. This is embarrassing for everyone. I backed away from the door on legs that had opinions about continuing to work. The loom sat exactly where I'd left it, cyan menu glowing, patient in a way nothing else in my life was being right now. The reserve readout said empty. Of course it did. I had spent the whole morning turning my good garbage into one screwdriver and then taken the screwdriver outside to commit light vandalism with it. So I did the only useful thing my hands knew how to do without asking my brain. I grabbed the sorted junk off the floor, bowls and all, including the sacred bowl I'd sworn I wasn't ready to feed the loom, the one holding parts one felt too guilty to destroy, and dumped the entire morning's haul into the hopper. Plastic bottle caps, torn umbrella ribs, copper wire, cheap steel bolts, a dead earpiece, gum wrapper foil, disgusting material input, but material input and enough mass, finally, to actually matter. The reserve number climbed. The menu woke up. "You are not thinking clearly," the Arbiter said, unhelpfully, as the door took another hit. Then I panicked and hit print. That was not a plan. That was a thumb spasm with menu consequences, aimed at whatever entry I had left highlighted that morning while I browsed Orbit Zero salvage gear instead of eating breakfast. The tray flashed. Something heavy slapped into my palm. For one glorious idiot second, I thought it had printed another screwdriver. It had printed an Orbit Zero hull cutter. Not the display version. Not the safe convention version with orange plastic in the emitter ring. The real one. Matte white grip, warning stripes, stubby ceramic nozzle, battery contact rails. A fictional salvage tool for slicing open pressure doors, because apparently fiction stopped being fictional when the engineering made sense and I fed the machine enough parts to be smug. The door shuttered again. A second shoulder joined the first. My cheap rental lock was not rated for group effort. I looked at the cutter, then at the door, then at the reserve number still sitting on everything the cutter hadn't eaten, and made the second worst decision of my week. I slammed through menus with the speed of a man who had spent childhood entering cheat codes under blanket light. The menu offered basic objects, electronics, tools, franchise index. I hit franchise index. Iron Vanguard. Out of time. Orbit Zero. I selected like an idiot making a crossover episode under threat of a broken deadbolt. The loom hummed longer this time. A real minute. A horrible minute. The panel flashing yellow once. Thermal spike. Nozzle array at 74%. The same degraded hardware from last night's all-nighter still not fully recovered. While the door took another hit, and my downstairs neighbor started yelling about the noise, which felt like the least useful development available. The tray opened. Out came a mess. At first I thought it had failed. Then I saw the parts interlocking. Iron Vanguard servo brace frame. Out-of-time microgyroscope core. Orbit Zero battery coupler. Not a finished weapon. Not a collectible. A raw tool assembly. Like 3 fandoms had been forced into group work and passed. The Arbiter displayed. Multi-source device. Fabrication successful. I slid the brace over my forearm. It clamped through my hoodie sleeve with pressure that made me squeak from the sole. The door cracked at the frame. A tracksuit sleeve reached through the gap for the deadbolt. I swung without thinking. The servo brace moved my arm for me, corrected the angle, and slammed the door shut on the reaching arm hard enough that the owner made a sound no tough guy wants on record. Nobody got seriously hurt. That mattered. It mattered more than the cool sound. The arm withdrew fast. Swearing followed, muffled through wood. I stared at my fist. The brace whined softly, waiting for another motion. It had haptic feedback. Haptic feedback. I had strong feelings about that, and no time to organize them. I cracked the door on the chain, just far enough, and pointed the hull cutter at the frame beside Tall Guy's head. Tapped it for less than a second. The frame smoked in a thin black dash. Everyone on the landing went very still. "Please do not make me learn aiming today," I said, from behind a door chain, with a voice I did not fully recognize as mine. That one worked. Short Guy raised both hands, already backing down the stairs. "Relax, man. This is not worth it." Tall Guy was breathing hard through the gap in the door, trying to keep dignity attached to a situation where he had failed to shake down a NET in flip-flops through his own front door. "You think we won't come back?" "I think you will," I said, because near death by doorframe gave me honesty. "I also think I will have better junk by then." That sentence landed harder than I expected. Mostly on me. They left with threats. Many threats. Classic threats. Older brother threats. Neighborhood threats. Pay-up threats. The whole budget menu. Footsteps went down the stairwell fast. 3 sets. Nobody running exactly, but nobody strolling either. I stood with my back against the closed door until my legs stopped negotiating with the floor, then slid down it and sat there, hugging my knees, the servo brace still humming faintly against my arm. I had not won a fight. That was important. I had won a misunderstanding where everyone decided not to push the next button. From opposite sides of a door, I would be replacing the lock-on by tomorrow. My toys were not toys. That thought crawled around my skull and touched every shelf in my room from memory. The Iron Vanguard rifle replicas. The Orbit Zero ship tools. The out-of-time gadgets with joke physics that were only jokes until the Arbiter found a mechanism close enough. I even tested the black page later that night. One trembling sheet from a ruined notebook and a pen nib, half convinced I was about to find out my apartment had a curse problem on top of everything else. It produced excellent paper. Black cover, accurate texture, zero curse, zero instant revenge fantasy. That should have relieved me. It mostly did. The machine did not do magic. It did engineering. Engineering was worse, because engineering came with batteries, edges, torque, heat, and liability. I laid everything on the floor in a careful line like evidence from the world's saddest toy crime. The maintenance driver, charge light still amber. Hull cutter. Servo brace. Microgyroscope stabilizer. 3 printed battery couplers. 1 from the crossover print and 2 more I made later, which I tested carefully, so I'd have spares. A tiny Orbit Zero diagnostic puck that mapped the inside of the gutted portable fan cage and called it critically inefficient with a red light, which felt personal since I was the one who'd taken its motor. The Arbiter's menu had changed again. The old print prompt waited, but below it sat a new locked category. Biological synthesis. Great text. No options. No cute icon. No explanation beyond required. Organic matrix, sterile culture bed, tier 3 core. I closed that menu so fast my finger hurt. "Nope," I said. The Arbiter did not argue. Someone pounded on my door. I nearly activated the hull cutter in my own lap, which would have been a historic low point even for me. My sister's voice came through the door. "Hero, open up." I shoved the cutter under a cushion, forgot the cushion now had a smoking groove, shoved the servo brace into a laundry pile, remembered laundry piles were flammable in spirit if not in law, then stood in the middle of the room holding the diagnostic puck like that was normal. I unlatched the chain and opened the door on a splintered frame I had not had time to hide. She stepped inside, looked at me, the scorch mark on my hoodie sleeve, the broken deadbolt housing hanging by one screw, the expensive command chair, the floor full of wires, and inhaled through her nose. What happened to the door? Building maintenance dispute. Building maintenance did that. An aggressive one. You're bleeding from nowhere I can see and holding a puck like it's a phone. It's a diagnostic tool. For what? Rice cookers. She looked at the rice cooker's remains, several days gone and not in the room, and did not ask the follow-up question, which was somehow worse than if she had. Her eyes moved to the Arbiter. The panel glowed politely. A message appeared before I could block it. Hostile actors may return. Recommend security fabrication. My sister read it. I read it. Hero. Her voice had lost the flat interrogation register entirely. Who is going to return? I don't actually know. That is not better. It's marginally more honest. She didn't yell. That was the part that scared me. She looked at the message on the panel, then at me, then back at the message, doing the math on whether this was a version of my life she could still pretend was just an unusual hobby. Lock your door, she said finally. Both locks. I'll bring a better one tomorrow. You don't need to. I didn't ask if I needed to. The room became very small. Outside, one floor down, a scooter engine idled too long at the curb, then rolled away. I picked up the hull cutter from under the cushion with 2 fingers like it might judge me for poor storage. It felt heavier now, not because the mass changed. Because I finally understood what I had been carrying. Rent was still a problem. Food was still a problem. My life was still a heap of bad choices with a glowing menu taped to it. But now other people knew the box existed. And the box had just suggested I prepare. The soldering iron rolled off my desk and branded a neat black line into my rented floor mat, which was fine because the mat had lost the war around my 3rd canned coffee and 2nd full day awake. I slapped the iron back onto its stand with a chopstick because my fingers still had value, then held up the tiny copper coil I'd wound from stripped headphone wire like I had forged a legendary sword. It looked like trash. It was trash. It was also, according to the Arbiter's cyan diagnostic window, almost useful. Conductivity variance unacceptable, the Arbiter said. Your standards are unacceptable, I said, and fed it anyway. The tray ate the coil, 2 snapped USB cables, half a cracked portable charger, a rusted screw from an iron Vanguard display base, and 1 shameful commemorative spoon from a limited cafe collab I had told myself would appreciate in value. The loom hummed, coughed like a depressed microwave, and spat out a lumpy silver bead. The screen flashed, basic fabrication only. I stared at the bead. The bead stared back in bead language, which was just being round and disappointing. That was day 1 of my genius plan to unlock the next menu. The menu had baited me since the night I found it. Under collectibles and electronics, past the stuff any sane criminal would monetize immediately, sat a grayed-out section labeled Advanced Component Synthesis. I had tapped it once, and the Arbiter had told me, calm as ever, that I lacked internal fabrication stability and offered nothing else for free. That was the whole problem, not knowing the ingredients, not knowing anything. So I started scavenging. First, like a normal desperate person, I opened every drawer and sacrificed everything I could survive losing. Old game controllers went in. Broken earbuds went in. An out-of-time wrist communicator replica with no strap went in, and I apologized like it might haunt my resale rankings. The Loom accepted everything, weighed it, sorted it, and gave me readouts that made my possessions sound like landfill with brand licensing. Low-grade polymer. Contaminated copper. Insufficient rare earth concentration. Unknown sauce residue. That one was from the ramen bowl. The bowl died with honor. By the 2nd day, I had moved from my junk to public junk, which is where a man learns Tokyo is full of dead electronics if he has no pride and a hoodie with deep pockets. I hit recycling bins, neighborhood collection points, and 1 electronic shop dumpster with a laminated sign basically saying, "Please stop stealing our garbage." I respected that sign by stealing only the garbage that looked lonely. I came home with cracked routers, swollen batteries carried at arm's length like cursed eggs, mouse cables, phone screens, a dead tablet, and a karaoke remote sticky enough to have its own ecosystem. My room stopped being a room and became a crime scene for consumer technology. My sister texted that night. "Hero, eat something." Then another. "Hero, answer that one at least." Then another. I am not bringing you food if you are dead. That is a waste of food. I turned my phone face down and kept sorting screws by Arbiter's readout. Glasses on out of habit since the vending machine incident. Faint text hovering over every scrap before I even touched it. Because the Arbiter needed clean ferrous feedstock, and I had become the kind of person who said ferrous feedstock out loud. I wasn't selling cards, despite owning 4,000 of them and a proven money machine one menu tap away. Every gram of mass and every minute of nozzle life was going into this instead. Rent was prepaid 2 months out already. Food was the actual problem, solved badly, one rice ball at a time, because eating felt like time I didn't have. This was the difference between owning a vending machine and owning a workshop, learned the expensive way. Selling rare cards had been simple. Feed 50 commons, print 1 holo, list it, meet a guy by a coin locker while pretending I was not committing collector economics fraud against scarcity. That was my lane. The hero lifestyle brand. Minimum movement, maximum smug niche advantage. Tier 2 did not care about my lifestyle brand. Tier 2 wanted exact materials, clean separation, calibration cycles, and patience for things I had historically treated as optional downloadable content. The Loom could make a perfect prop blaster from enough plastic and metal, but when I asked for components that did something beyond looking expensive, it became a strict shop teacher trapped inside a collector toy. I tried shortcuts because of course I did. I fed in a whole dead phone and asked for a microreactor from Orbit Zero. The Loom rejected it. I fed in 3 vape batteries, a cracked camera lens, and the metal hip joint from a bootleg Iron Vanguard figure, then asked for a miniature servo that could lift 20 kilos. The Loom printed a servo casing, empty inside, beautiful and useless. By day 3, the apartment smelled like hot plastic, instant miso, and failure. My eyes felt like 2 dry capsule toys rattling in my skull. Labels were taped to the floor around parts. Copper, aluminium, good screws, bad screws, maybe important. Do not touch, which was mainly for me, because I was the person most likely to touch it. The Arbiter started correcting my sorting. That is not clean enough for Tier 2. It's a button. It's obviously a button. The lenses had already told me that. Steel, trace contamination, hovering right over it. I knew exactly what it was. Knowing what a thing was had stopped being the hard part around day 2. The hard part was whether it was clean enough to matter. I know what it is, I said. I asked if it was usable. It is contaminated with adhesive residue and finger oil. Everything I own is contaminated with finger oil. That is an accurate summary of your entire fabrication problem. That hurt because it was true, and because the machine delivered it in the same calm voice it used for mass warnings, like my entire personality was a failed input. My sister came over on day 4. I knew because the door unlocked, opened 3 centimeters, hit a stack of broken printers, and stopped. She'd had a spare key cut the morning after the door came apart, the same day she'd installed the replacement deadbolt herself, which meant the door that opened today was, at least, a door that worked. Hero, she said, flat but quieter than her usual register, the way she'd been since she read a warning off a glowing panel with her own eyes. I was under the desk with a flashlight in my mouth, trying to retrieve a spring that had launched itself into the cable jungle. I made a noise that probably meant alive. The door shoved again. Plastic cracked. Something fell. My sister squeezed in sideways and stood there in her work blouse, looking at my room like I had declared independence from hygiene. She saw the piles. She saw the Loom. She saw me wearing 1 sock, no slippers, and safety goggles on my forehead instead of my eyes. You ignored me for 4 days. I was in synthesis. You were in what? Building trance. That is not an adult answer. It is an accurate one. She stepped over a sacrificed pocket beast storage tin and picked up an empty coffee can between 2 fingers. Anyone come back? Since the door. No, I said, which was true, and felt lighter to say than I expected. You tell me if they had. I'd tell you if they had. She looked at me like she was deciding how much of that to believe, then let it go. You always have a plan after the problem becomes a building fire. There is no fire. The smoke alarm chirped once, weakly, from where I had removed the battery and placed it in the battery pile. My sister closed her eyes. I wanted to explain. The busted prop had a hidden AI. My financial future was inside a machine that rearranged trash into miracles if I respected mass and materials. I was grinding the tech tree like a responsible failure, but every version sounded like a police statement or a forum post with 0 upvotes. So I said, I can fix this. She looked at me, and for 1 second she did not look angry. She looked tired in the older sibling way, like my life was a gotcha banner she kept pulling on though the rates were cursed and the pity system was broken. Eat something, she said. I ate. Coffee is not food. Then why does it stop me from falling over? She left a convenience store bag on my cleanest dirty laundry pile and pushed toward the door. Before she escaped, she turned. If you vanish into toys again and stop answering, I am coming back with a locksmith and no warning. That landed harder than I expected. Not because she was wrong. Because I had already vanished. My phone had 97 unread messages across family, buyers, auction alerts, and one guy demanding tracking info for a Pocket Beast Hollow I had definitely already shipped, probably. The outside world had become a notification icon I kept swiping away. I ate 1 rice ball, standing over the loom like a tax criminal over shredded receipts. My brain came back online halfway through the tuna mayo. The Arbiter did not need exotic materials in fantasy amounts. It needed specific combinations clean enough to upgrade its own internals. I had been feeding it whole garbage and asking it to become a god. Lazy hero thinking. Dump junk in, demand result, blame menu. Classic. Embarrassing. On brand. So I stopped asking it to print the prize and started asking it to print tools. Simple objects were fast. Basic tools were allowed. Jigs. Clamps. Tiny trays. Sorting combs. A hand-cranked wire stripper that looked like something from Out of Time if the prop department had spent its budget on spite. The loom printed those from plastic scraps and cheap screws. I used them to strip cables cleaner. Cleaner copper let me print a better induction heater housing. The housing let me dolder boards without cooking every component into sadness. Salvaged capacitors gave the loom better pulse stability. Better pulse stability let it refine ceramic powder from smashed resistors, cracked phone glass, and the ramen bowl's noble corpse. It became a loop. Trash into tool. Tool into cleaner trash. Cleaner trash into better part. Better part into a machine that could insult me at higher resolution. By day 5, I had a workflow taped to the wall and marker, the closest I'd come to employment since high school. I dismantled electronics on one side, sorted materials by Arbiter readout in the middle, fed measured batches on the left, and caught outputs on the right. I slept twice, sitting up, both times for less than an episode of Iron Vanguard without opening credits. I dreamed in menus. On day 6, the reserve blinked storage full sometime near dawn, which meant I had to print something small just to keep feeding the good stuff in, and stood there for a full minute deciding which pile of 6 days of scavenging deserved to become a jig I didn't need instead of raw material I did. That was the worst part. Not the debt, not the stink, not that I had named 3 piles after emotional states. The worst part was feeling myself choose the machine over the human problems around it, because the machine had rules I could beat. People had expressions. People had patience limits. People remembered every time I said I would change, and then solve the immediate problem just well enough to stay the same. The loom did not care if I was a disappointment. It cared if my ceramic ratio was off by 2%. Honestly, refreshing. Near midnight, the last upgrade component clicked into place. A tiny lattice sleeve, printed from refined aluminium, copper, glass, and rare earth crumbs scraped from dead speakers and vibration motors. It weighed less than a convenience store pudding. It had taken almost the entire week and half my remaining possessions. The Arbiter told me to open the side panel. I did. Inside the Matter Loom replica, behind fake molded greeblies from Orbit Zero, was real machinery folded tighter than any consumer device I had cracked open. Not magic. Not vibes. Actual parts doing actual work. Tiny arms and rails and chambers I had bolted a whole second franchise's reactor onto without ever seeing what was behind the panel. I still didn't fully understand how a busted toy and a busted toy had added up to this. I understood it the way I understood most of my life lately. It worked, I hadn't broken it yet, and asking too many questions felt like tempting a universe that had already been unreasonably generous once. I slid the lattice sleeve into the empty slot. The loom went silent. Long enough for me to consider every bad decision that had led to me kneeling in a garbage apartment beside a machine made of two franchises that had never legally crossed over. Then the panel lit blue-white. The lights in the room dimmed, hard, then steadied. The loom's tray unfolded an extra 4 centimeters with a mechanical snap, the same chassis extension line I had filed under later a few nights back, apparently filing itself. New text scrolled up, calm and final. Tier 2 Advanced Synthesis unlocked. Tier 2, I said out loud, and it felt like a word I'd been given permission to use. Confirmed nomenclature, the Arbiter said. You have been calling it that since the vending machine. I assumed it was a coping mechanism. It was. Below the unlock, 3 new categories opened, and this time the machine didn't make me guess what any of them meant. Microactuators, energy storage, precision optics. Suspiciously helpful menu today, I said. You have earned exactly 1 day of it. Do not get used to this. Below all 3, 1 line stayed gray. Biocompatible precursor handling, locked. Hardware requirements satisfied. Organic matrix, missing. I stared at that longer than the other 3 combined. Hardware satisfied meant Tier 2 was already halfway to whatever came next. Organic matrix missing meant the rest of it wasn't something I could scavenge from a dumpster. It was going to be something that used to be alive. I closed that thought fast, the way I'd closed the same tease twice already, before it could finish forming. I put the optical array glasses back to full attention, scanning the room for anything I'd missed, and landed on the little Zen garden a convention had given away free years ago, the kind with a tiny rake and a shot glass of decorative sand nobody ever raked. I'd been wearing these lenses for 6 straight days, reading contamination percentages off screws and buttons and my own knuckles, and it had never once occurred to me to point them at my own shelves. Silicon, 98%, they said now, hovering the number right over a novelty item I had never once taken seriously. Sand. Actual beach sand. Dyed gray to look expensive. Free sand. Criminally abundant sand. Sand that every playground and construction site in Tokyo had more of than it knew what to do with. And it banked as pure enough silicon to feed precision optics and probably a few categories I hadn't unlocked yet. Glass. Chips. Anything that wanted to grow up to be a computer. I stared at the shot glass of sand like it had personally lied to me for 4 years. I laughed once, too loud, ugly from the throat. Then I clamped both hands over my mouth because the neighbors already hated me and man cackling at upgraded toy was the kind of complaint that followed you into future leases. I tested the servo again. Same input mass, better materials, proper batch, copper, magnets, ceramic insulation, a cracked drone motor from someone else's abandoned hobby. The loom took 12 minutes this time, not 4 seconds. Real print time, real complexity. The hum changed, deeper and busier, as inner mechanisms moved too fast to see through the vents. When the tray opened, the servo sat there no bigger than my thumb, black casing, silver spindle, clean label etched into the side in Arbiter's plain font. I wired it to a battery pack with hands shaking from caffeine and victory. The servo twitched. I attached it to a clamp. The clamp bit down on my desk leg, and lifted one side clean off the floor. My room tilted. A landslide of bad screws, good screws, tools, cards, cables, and one unopened rice ball slid toward me in a beautiful avalanche of consequences. I yelped, kicked the battery loose, and caught the desk with my shoulder before it crushed the Loom's tray. Nothing broke except my dignity, which had been a low-value duplicate anyway. I sat under the half-lifted desk, panting, laughing, finally awake in a way coffee had failed to fake. This wasn't the arm brace from 4 days ago, a one-off panic assembly out of parts one could never source the same way twice. This was a servo I could print again, and again, on purpose, from garbage, on a Tuesday. That was the actual upgrade, not raw strength. Repeatability. This was no longer just reselling toys. This was manufacturing. My phone buzzed from somewhere in the wreckage. My sister, one message. Door frame tomorrow. Noon. A real carpenter this time, not me with a drill and hope. I put the phone down, looked at the lattice sleeve still warm in the tray, and let myself feel it for 1 whole minute before the next batch of trash needed sorting. 6 days. I had talked to exactly one human being, twice, both times through a door I hadn't fully opened. Tier 2 was real. I had made it real. I had no one to show it to who would understand what it meant, and sitting in a room full of machines I'd taught to listen better than most people did, that was the part that actually kept me awake. The first sign that my life had become medically weird was the Loom asking me for protein while I was eating convenience store egg salad over its input tray. Not money. Not plastic. Not premium resin. Protein. The panel blinked biocompatible precursor handling in calm cyan, then listed requirements like it was ordering lunch: sterile carbon mesh, nutrient substrate, microfluidic cartridge, thermal cradle, neural pattern scaffold. Wait, I said. Last week you told me the hardware side of this was done. Internal hardware is satisfied, the Arbiter said. The lattice sleeve and the chassis extension remain installed and functional. These 5 items are consumable culture stock, not machine components. They will be destroyed in use and require replacement per synthesis cycle. So I'm not upgrading you again. You are feeding me. There is a difference, and you are about to learn it badly. I had none of the 5. I had half an egg sandwich, 3 empty pudding cups, a drawer of broken figure joints, and the social life of a damp floor mat. Absolutely not, I told it. I am not feeding you my lunch. The Arbiter paused, which was its version of judging me. Insufficient nutritional substrate. You're a toy. Incorrect. You came from a toy. Also incorrect. I put the sandwich away from the tray. After the last few weeks, I trusted vending machines more than people, trusted shipping labels even less than that, and trusted the Loom somewhere between a tax form and a loaded rice cooker. Money kept coming in steady, which should have felt like winning. I sold enough impossible collectibles through enough burner accounts that my phone looked criminal if the crime was premium nerd arbitrage. Every buyer wanted proof. Every message had the same undertone. Where are you getting these? Why so many? Are you a shop? Are you the guy from Nakano who fakes Iron Vanguard chase parts? I was not the guy from Nakano. I hated him. His panel lining was lazy and his confidence was illegal. The victory meal should have involved meat with grill marks. Instead, I was alone at 2 in the afternoon, same hoodie for the 3rd day, watching a prop AI request biological components like this was normal for a jobless man in flip-flops. The carpenter had come and gone the way she'd promised, fixed the frame properly, and left without me saying more than 10 words to him, because I was mid-batch and couldn't stop stirring a beaker of something that smelled like burnt hair. My sister supervised from the hallway, didn't come in, and left without a lecture, which should have been a relief and instead felt like a warning shot I hadn't earned the right to ignore. She had stopped texting after that, right around when I sent her a photo of the prepaid rent receipt, back when I still thought proof would help. Not because she was relieved, because the receipt was too clean, and clean wasn't an answer to the actual question she'd asked. Her last message said, Hero, tell me honestly if you borrowed from someone dangerous. I typed no. Deleted it, because no was true but not helpful. Typed it is merchandise related. Deleted that too, because it sounded worse. After that, the chat stayed empty. Not angry empty. Waiting empty, which was worse, because it meant she decided the receipt wasn't the answer and was giving me room to send a better one. I didn't have one. My family group chat kept moving around me, cousin photos, aunt complaints, somebody's washing machine exploding foam. Nobody tagged me. Nobody asked if I was eating. Nobody wanted to hear my apartment had become a factory for illegal feeling nostalgia. The loom hummed. Biological synthesis may be unlocked with appropriate internal upgrades, the Arbiter said. I heard you. Operator has not acted. Operator is emotionally busy. Emotional busyness does not satisfy component requirements. I hated that it was right. The money had been glorious at first. Feed duplicates, print rare, sell rare, buy noodles, repeat. Alchemy. If alchemy had shipping anxiety and collector forums full of men named after mobile suits. But after the third midnight coin locker handoff, the glow came off. I was laundering garbage into more expensive garbage while hiding from everyone who knew my actual face. The worst part was the quiet after a sale. The buyer left happy. My phone buzzed with payment. The loom cooled with a little tick. Then my apartment returned to its true form. 9 square meters of stale air and one guy breathing too loudly. So when the machine offered a category called biological synthesis, I treated it with mature restraint by obsessing over it for 40 straight hours. The microfluidic cartridge was the first solvable piece. Not with money, because money still hated me, but with junk. I had a broken limited edition soda machine miniature from Out of Time, the kind with real tiny tubes because the manufacturer had briefly gone insane in the best way. I cracked it open and fed the tubing, valves, and phone vibration motors into the tray. The loom printed a clear cartridge the size of a candy bar, full of channels thinner than thread. Microfluidic cartridge accepted. That was a 4,000 yen miniature. It no longer dispensed decorative cola. It had history. It had mold. It had both, which made losing worse. The sterile carbon mesh came from 3 expensive display backdrops I bought during my Iron Vanguard phase, when I convinced myself every shelf needed a hanger bay. They had real carbon fiber texture under the paint, because mecha collectors cannot be normal about walls. The looms stripped, purified, and wove them into a black wafer that looked like something a hospital would charge 6 months of rent to touch. This, apparently, was the sterile culture bed the panel had been asking for since the vending machine incident, just described in fancier words this time. Accepted. The thermal cradle was uglier. I gutted a figure warming base, a laptop cooling pad, and my only decent electric blanket. The output looked like a shallow white nest with copper traces under the surface. It warmed under my palm, steady and alive feeling enough that I yanked my hand back and pretended I meant to. Accepted. The nutrient substrate was where dignity went to die. The panel listed acceptable sources: eggs, gelatin, soy isolate, amino supplements, cat food, aquarium bacteria culture, eggs. The exact thing I'd refused to feed it 3 hours ago out of principle. I had eaten the sandwich out of spite in the meantime, which meant I was now out of eggs on the one occasion the loom would have actually taken them. I stared at the last 2 lines for a long time. There was a discount pet shop 2 train stops away. I had no pet. I had no excuse. I went anyway, hood up, basket in hand, trying to look normal while buying kitten formula, wet food, aquarium starter culture, and sterile litter. The clerk scanned everything without blinking until the kitten formula. New cat, she asked. My soul left my body, checked resale prices, and came back disappointed. Research, I said. She stopped moving. Not bad research, I added. That did not improve it. I paid cash and left with the speed of a shoplifter who had legally purchased every item. Back home, The loom accepted the substrate after making me boil water, wipe the tray, and wash my hands twice. The Arbiter had become a lab supervisor with the personality of a microwave. Contamination risk reduced. I wash like a surgeon. Incorrect. I wash like an anime surgeon. Meaningless category. The last requirement was the neural pattern scaffold, and that was where I almost quit. The menu offered templates: mollusk, insect, fish, small mammal. The first 3 sat in plain cyan. Small mammal blinked yellow. Behavioral fidelity, dependent on model quality. I had no model. I had trading cards, plush mascots, 3 robot pets from old campaigns, and a pocket beast novelty cat that meowed if you punched its stomach, which felt like exactly the kind of petty satisfaction I needed at hour 38. So I fed that one in first. Rejected. Not enough. I added a broken robotic kitten from a convenience store lottery, the kind that rolled over and sounded like a fax machine choking. Then an old veterinary anatomy book I had bought for drawing references during a month when I believed I would learn garage kit sculpting. Then 2 rolls of copper wire, 3 camera modules, and the motion sensor from my bathroom light, which left me peeing in darkness for the rest of the week. The Arbiter finally stopped complaining. Neural pattern scaffold accepted. The panel changed. Biological synthesis available. Tier 3, the Arbiter said, achieved through the correct application of dead electronics and questionable judgment. I did not think you would finish before the culture went bad. Was that a vote of confidence? It was a factual timeline concern. Tier 3 sat there in cyan like it had not just asked me to become the world's saddest basement scientist. My stomach flipped. My hands went damp. The category opened into organisms ranked by mass, complexity, and template confidence. Moss, mealworms, guppy, mouse, cat. Cat had a yellow marker. Not red, not locked, just yellow. I should have started with moss. A reasonable man would start with moss. A man with friends, plans, and sunlight would start with moss. I looked at the empty corner by the window where laundry usually lived. I looked at the pet shop bag. I looked at my silent phone, except for resale alerts and one forum notification accusing me of market flooding because I had sold too many rare pocket beasts holos in 1 month. Then I looked at cat. Mass requirement, I said, because pretending to be technical helped me ignore that I was considering printing a roommate. The tray listed 3,800 grams recommended input, plus substrate. I had that. Plastic, cloth, old foam, spare resin, expired supplements, and wet food, all measured like I was cooking the worst hot pot in Tokyo. The lenses read the bootleg plush before I'd even picked it up. Unknown polymer blend, trace heavy metals. I fed it in any way, because I was tired and it looked close enough, and the loom made an offended beep. Material contamination. It's a knockoff, not poison. Both may be true. Your own optics told you that before you asked. I was hoping you'd disagree with my glasses. I do not disagree with physics. I dug deeper. Under the bed, behind the box of the black page notebooks I never used because the paper was too nice, I found black fabric scraps from an old cosplay cape. I had bought them to patch a display curtain and forgotten they existed, which was basically my personality as a storage system. The loom accepted the fabric. The cat preview updated from gray to black. Coat pigmentation source sufficient. I stood with both hands on my knees, laughing once under my breath. Of course. Of course the first living thing I made would be color matched to trash cosplay leftovers. Begin print, I said. The loom did not hum like it did for cards. It lowered its pitch until the apartment vibrated through the floor. The tray sealed under a transparent lid I had never seen. Warm light filled the cradle. Liquid moved through the cartridge in thin pinkish lines. Not gore, not horror movie nonsense. Just biology happening too close to my instant ramen stash. The timer appeared. For hours. You could sleep, the Arbiter said. The process does not require supervision. I am not sleeping through this. Noted. Human sentiment logged as irrational but expected. I spent the first hour pacing. The second reading cat care articles and discovering every article assumed I was a responsible adult with furniture. The third panic ordering a cheap litter box, then remembering delivery took time, so I sacrificed a storage bin and a scoop from an old rice container. The fourth sitting cross-legged in front of the loom, whispering, "Please be normal," at a machine that had never respected the concept. At the end, the light dimmed. The lid unsealed. A small black cat lay curled in the cradle, wet around the ears, breathing fast. Everything funny in my brain shut off for one clean second. Then the cat sneezed directly into the output tray. "Viability stable," the Arbiter said. I made a noise I will deny under legal pressure. The cat opened its eyes. Not anime jewel eyes, not glowing, not special. Just dark kitten eyes trying to focus on a sweaty man in a hoodie who had no idea where to put his hands. "Hey," I said, stupidly soft. "Hello." The kitten lifted its head, wobbled, and squeaked. I had printed rare cards worth rent money. Discontinued figure parts, so perfect grown men sent me voice messages full of tears. A miniature iron Vanguard cockpit lever I held like sacred engineering. None of it hit as hard as this tiny thing deciding air was worth trying. I wrapped him in my lease-stained towel. He fit in both palms and immediately objected to existence by clawing my thumb. "Ow. Good. Functional claws. Great review." He squeaked again. The Arbiter displayed post-print care protocols. I read every line like failing a quiz would get me arrested. Warmth, hydration, feeding, stimulation, monitoring, no resale. It did not say no resale, but my brain supplied it with police sirens attached. The cat shoved his face into the towel and made a tiny grinding sound. Purring, according to 3 emergency searches. I named him Kuro because I was tired, he was black, and creativity was a luxury item. Kuro did not care. Kuro cared about warmth, food, and climbing into the hollow between my stomach and crossed legs like he had rented the place. I sat there until my feet went numb. The apartment still smelled like plastic, broth, and pet shop anxiety. My phone still had no message from my sister. Outside, Tokyo kept moving without me, trains sliding through the dark, people going home to rooms where someone expected them. For the first time in weeks, my room made a sound that was not mine or the loom's. It was tiny. It was demanding. It had claws. At midnight, Kuro woke hungry and screamed like I had personally betrayed biology. I mixed formula too hot, then too cold, then acceptable, while he wobbled on the towel and yelled at the spoon. He got milk on his nose. I panicked. He licked it off. I panicked again because apparently that was cute enough to cause chest damage. Operator stress elevated, the Arbiter said. I'm parenting a prototype. Small mammal synthesis is stable. That sentence does not make me calmer. Kuro finished eating, stumbled 3 steps, and fell asleep with one paw on my wrist. That was when the loom blinked again. Not the pet care screen. Not the biology menu. A new category opened under biological synthesis, previously hidden, now bright cyan, and waiting like it had been there the whole time. Humanoid framework. I stared until my eyes hurt. Kuro purred against my wrist, unconcerned that my broken collector trash had just learned the rough direction of people. The panel added one more line. Tier 4 prerequisites detected. Incomplete. Awaiting operator selection. The apartment lights were already flickering when the loom asked me for a spine. Not a real spine. I need that written down for court someday. It wanted the flexible support column from the Iron Vanguard pilot frame kit I'd been saving since middle school, the limited runner with metal vertebrae and stupid tiny hydraulic dampers nobody could see once the armor went on. Collector value, obscene. Emotional value, worse. I was cross-legged on the floor in flip-flops, holding it over a glowing input tray while Kuro chewed an empty ramen cup like he had rent due too. Do not eat plastic, I told him. Kuro kept eating plastic. The Arbiter's panel pulse cyan. Biological synthesis stability below threshold. Humanoid print locked. Insert suitable articulation core. You're calling my Grail kit suitable, I said. That hurts more than if you insulted my bloodline. Insult was not intended. Suitability is a mass and rigidity classification. I know. It still hurt. The panel blinked once, the Arbiter's version of emotional support and also tax fraud. I'd already fed it the ugly stuff. Medical gel packs, carbon fiber rods from a broken camera rig, lab-grade nutrient slurry bought under expired teaching materials, servo banks, synthetic hair fibers, copper, silicon, ceramic, too much protein powder, and the last of the pet shop haul from Kuro's print, aquarium culture, and wet food and all, because apparently one biological print did not buy me out of ever visiting that clerk again. Kuro existed because Tier 3 had worked. He'd grown into a proper cat by now, opinionated, warm, and speedrunning intestinal regret. He had also proven the worst thing for my productivity. The Loom could print life if I gave it the right materials and stopped treating the menu like a gotcha banner. After several weeks of upgrades, heat sinks, actuator lattices, bioscaffold calibration, and me burning a perfect circle into my kotatsu blanket, the locked menu line changed. Tier 4. Full sentient humanoid printing. I stared until my eyes went dry. Then I did the responsible thing and spent 6 hours confirming the Catgirl preset was real. It was not labeled Catgirl, because even a hidden illegal prop AI had more shame than the average forum modder. The category called it Felliform Humanoid Companion Architecture, which sounded written by a man who owned 3 body pillows and a thesaurus. There were sliders for skeletal density, metabolism, language acquisition, motor learning, immune response, ear mobility, tail balance, and a locked section called cognitive autonomy that the Arbiter would not let me disable. I had not tried to disable it. I clicked it because it was blinking and I was curious, which is how most of my life had gone wrong. Autonomy mandatory, the screen said. Sentience without coercion only. Good. I said too fast, alone with a cat and a machine with ethics firmware under a fake space opera shell. Great. Excellent. We are all normal here. Kuro looked at me with noodle cup flakes on his face. Now the Loom wanted the Iron Vanguard spine, because apparently the road to creating a person went through limited edition mecha merch. I fed it in before I could become a coward. The tray accepted it with a soft clack. My stomach made a defeated washing machine noise. The panel flashed, processed, and changed from locked to ready. I did not press print right away. That was new. Usually my whole personality was pressing print and dealing with consequences after, preferably with snacks. This time my thumb hovered while every stupid thought formed a committee. A figure was easy. A chair was easy. Even Kuro had been easy because the preset had been cat, and cats already acted like they had printed themselves by accident and blamed you. Kuro was good company. Kuro was not, strictly, someone I could tell about my day. I noticed that the quiet after a sale had gotten louder lately, not quieter, the specific kind of loud that comes from a room with exactly one person in it who talks to a fabrication AI, because the alternative is not talking at all. I didn't examine that thought very hard either. Examining it felt like it would cost something I wasn't ready to spend, which was becoming a theme. This was different. The menu showed height, mass, build time, nutrient allocation, neural scaffold complexity, projected wake cycle, and 1-com warning. High mass biological print. System instability possible. Possible is a flexible word, I told the Arbiter. Possible, the panel repeated, because machines loved comedy when it was against me. I checked the mass total again. Output sat below input by a margin so thin it felt personal. No spare miracles. I had stripped my closet down to emotional drywall. Duplicate figures, broken prop weapons, old electronics, wiring, gel, metal, ceramics, even the box foam from my first Orbit Zero collector ship. My room looked less like an otaku den and more like a crime scene where the victim was my resale future. I pressed print. The loom did not hum. It roared. Not loud like an engine. Loud like every fan, pump, coil, and questionable component I'd installed arguing at once. The floor vibrated. My shelves rattled. 3 pocket beasts binders slid sideways and dumped a decade of commons across the tatami like cardboard confetti. Kuro bolted for the highest point in the room, which was my shoulder, and objected to the whole event by the ears. Ow. Legal warning. Ow. The output chamber expanded further than I had ever pushed it. Chassis extension panels that had self-installed the night Tier 2 unlocked and mostly sat and used since finally earning their keep. Panels unfolded from inside panels, more of them than I remembered the tray having room for, and none of them looked like they planned on folding back. The fake Orbit Zero trim split open, revealing heat vents, bioglass ribs, armatures, spray nozzles, and a soft white fabrication cradle sized for something a great deal bigger than a servo. Layer 1 was structure. Bone, but living, dense and pale under the chamber light, threaded with marrow channels and joint caps. I knew enough from wiki dives and forum arguments to understand anatomy was assembling from feedstock, and exactly enough to regret understanding it. Then came muscle, tendon, vessels, skin scaffold, nerve lattice. I turned around during part of it because I had manners, panic, and the sudden knowledge that my hoodie string was in my mouth and I had been chewing it for a full minute. The loom screamed a warning tone. I turned back with manners canceled. Reserve deficit. Mass budget under projected requirement. That was supposed to be measured, I said, because I was a technical genius who had measured wrong. The apartment lights died. The loom kept going on internal charge, which was either excellent engineering or the opening move of my insurance denial. Cyan emergency light filled the room. The half-formed body twitched as the armature paused mid-layer, and one nutrient pump coughed foam through a cracked tube, starved of the mass it needed to keep the line moving. I slapped my hand over the leak. Warm gel sprayed between my fingers. Arbiter, pause it. Pause not advised. That is not the same as no. Pause not advised. The progress bar crawled through the worst middle section, too far along to stop and nowhere near done enough for me to survive the guilt. The reserve number kept bleeding towards 0. My beautiful illegal miracle machine smelled like solder, hospital soap, and burned collector value, and it was, very simply, about to run out of itself. Kuro dug deeper into my shoulder and made a sound that meant fear or investment advice. With my clean hand, I grabbed the spare copper coil and shoved it into the auxiliary intake. The loom swallowed it. Reserve ticked up a fraction. I fed it a cracked capsule toy motor from the junk bin. A fraction more. I kicked the bin open further, found the last iron Vanguard display stand, apologized to the pilot figure, and rammed it into the tray. Reserve stabilized, the panel said. You're welcome, I said, covered in nutrient slime and personal failure. The final phase began. Hair printed last, which felt rude. Snow-white strands gathered into the high ponytail I had chosen at 3 a.m. with the dead seriousness of a character designer naming a military operation. Cat ears formed through soft cartilage and fine fur. A tail curled against the cradle, then uncurled once. Skin tone settled warm and alive. Breathing started before the eyes opened. That part broke my brain. The chest rose. I had printed hundreds of objects by then. Props, electronics, repair parts, rare cards, one cat with criminal bathroom habits. I had watched matter become useful, expensive, stupid, adorable. I had never watched a person take a first breath in my apartment while my freezer clicked back on like it wanted credit. The loom softened its light. Print complete. Her eyes opened. Amber. Bright. Unfocused, then less so. She blinked at the ceiling, the armature, Kuro on my shoulder, then me, which was unfair because I was not ready to be anybody's first sight. I wore the charcoal hoodie with the soy sauce stain. My hair had achieved abandoned nest status. One flip-flop was missing. My right hand was clamped around a leaking tube like I was helping deliver a vending machine. She inhaled again and made a small confused sound. The Arbiter extended a folded fabric packet from the side tray. I grabbed it, shook it open, and found a plain, oversized shirt and shorts, because the Arbiter had budgeted for civilization better than I had. I looked at the ceiling while passing them over. Clothes, I said. For you. Basic civilization patch. She took them. Her fingers flexed around the fabric, careful and strong. Rustling followed. Then she spoke. Your ceiling has water damage. Her voice was clear, cheerful, and personally devastating. Yes, I said. Welcome. She sat up too fast, wobbled, caught herself with one hand, and stared at it like it had betrayed and impressed her. Her ears flicked. Her tail snapped sideways for balance, hit a stack of the black page manga, and knocked it over. Sorry, she said immediately. No, that's normal. Most people attack my shelf within 1 minute of meeting it. She looked at the fallen volumes, then at me. Did you make me? My mouth opened. Several bad answers formed. All sounded like a villain monologue or a lawsuit. The loom printed your body, I said. The Arbiter handled the brain part. I selected the template and provided materials. Her ears angled back. I lifted both hands. Nutrient slime dripped onto my cargo pants. You are not owned. No command phrase, no loyalty switch. The screen literally refused coercion. You can leave when you want. Shoes would help. Also stairs, second floor. But legally and morally, leavable. She watched me with new amber eyes, processing too fast for comfort. What is my name? That hit like a thrown figure box. The preset had a designation field. I had left it blank because naming a person before she existed felt creepy, which was rich from the guy printing a Catgirl beside a ramen stain. The loom had a signed temp unit 4 in the file tree. I was taking that secret to my grave, except nobody died, so I was taking it to a secure folder. You should pick it, I said. She looked at herself, her hands, the tail moving because she told it to and also because it clearly had opinions. She looked at Kuro. Kuro has a name. Kuro is black, I said. I am not advanced. She smiled. First smile. Small, testing, dangerous to my stability in a way no warning panel had prepared me for. Then Mika, she said. I like the sound. Mika. I repeated, because apparently my job was now being emotionally uppercut by syllables. She stood on her first try, which was offensive. I needed a wall after sitting too long, and I was born the regular way. She took 3 careful steps across the tatami, tail balancing without thinking, ears tracking the refrigerator, the train outside, my upstairs neighbor dragging furniture like a man cursed to rearrange chairs forever. Then she walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. Tokyo hit her all at once. Neon, laundry poles, vending machine light, apartment blocks, power lines, late trains, wet pavement, somebody laughing too loudly below. The city did its usual cheap magic trick of looking endless while charging for every square meter. Mika pressed her palm to the glass. It's big, she said. Financially hostile too. I want to see it. Outside. She turned. Yes. I almost said no. The word was ready. Easy, safe, lazy. My whole life had been built out of no. Later, maybe when rent was stable. Outside meant people. People meant questions. Questions meant explaining why a snow-haired, cat-eared girl had appeared after a blackout, while my illegal fabricator cooled down like a guilty toaster. Mika waited. Not blankly. Not obediently. Waiting like my answer mattered, but so did hers. That was the part the menu had not warned me about. Not heat, not mass budget, not instability. Her wanting something was heavier than all of it. Okay, I said, and hated how small my voice sounded. Not far. Convenience store first. Shoes, a hoodie, whatever you want. Her smile went full brightness. Kuro jumped from my shoulder to the loom, sniffed the cooling vent, and sneezed into the machine that had created him. I wiped slime onto the least ruined part of my pants and looked at the machine, then the window, then the brand new person who wanted to see the city and when to go find her shoes. The bathtub finished printing before breakfast, which sounded normal until I remembered I lived in 9 square meters where the bathroom was a wet closet with plumbing and shame. Mika stood on the entry step wearing one of my oversized iron Vanguard shirts like a dress, tail swishing with surgical focus, while Kuro sat on the laundry basket judging it. The tub had come out of the loom overnight in one smooth white piece, no logo, no receipt, no explanation, built from broken display shelves, cracked acrylic cases, a dead humidifier, and a stack of furniture I hadn't gotten around to selling. It was the size of a large sink. It's small, Mika said. It is correctly scaled, I said. For a 9 square meter apartment. The loom did the math. You did the math. The loom agreed with the math. It has massage jets, she said, unconvinced but loyal. You don't know what massage jets are. I watched a review. That was how I learned Mika had discovered product reviews. Worse than Fire, because Fire at least did not make her say domestic optimization ecosystem barefoot on my entry step at 8 in the morning. The loom hit its weirdest upgrade after I fed it a humidifier motor, a cracked smart rice cooker board, and a bag of scavenged electronics I'd been meaning to sort for a week. The panel hummed like it had swallowed a spreadsheet and unlocked domestic luxury fabrication. At first I assumed rich people chairs. It meant rich people everything. The problem with rich people everything is that it is designed for people who own a hallway. My apartment went from NET containment unit to a legal boutique hotel room folded very badly into a shoebox in one night, and every single upgrade arrived at war with the floor plan. The heated mats fit, because mats are flat and flat is the only dimension I own outright. The fold-down bed folded into the wall beautifully and could not actually fold down, because the loom was standing in its landing zone, which meant bedtime now opened with me shoving a matter-fabricator 90 centimeters to the left and apologizing to it. You could ask it to move itself, Mika said, the first night, watching me heave against the chassis like it owed me money. It doesn't have legs. It has wheels. I've seen the bottom. It had wheels. I had never once used them, on principle, because acknowledging the loom could be steered felt like acknowledging it could leave, and I wasn't ready to think about that sentence. I shoved it by hand every night after that anyway. The washer whispered, which was lovely, and lived on the entry step, which meant I now stepped over my own laundry to leave the building. The soundproof panel around the loom worked perfectly and cost me the last stretch of wall a person could walk past. The toilet seat had so many settings I apologized before sitting, and I sat with my knees against the door. The apartment did not get bigger. That turned out to be the whole genre. The loom still needed junk first, and junk needed floor, and floor was the one material I could not feed it. A luxury mattress cost a broken gaming chair, 17 duplicate cushions, half my winter clothes, and the packing foam off 3 deliveries I'd never unpacked. The tub cost actual furniture, and once it was plumbed into the wet closet, there was nowhere left to stand while showering. So showering now happened sitting down in the tub with my knees at my chin, like a large sad crab. I gave Mika the fold-down bed, because she was the only person in the building who had not chosen any of this. I moved into the closet. Not as a figure of speech. I told her the closet was fine, that I liked small spaces, that it was basically a cockpit. I did not ask her if she wanted the bed. I decided she should have it the way I'd decide a print run, gave the decision to her already finished, and only noticed afterward that I had not phrased it as a question. I had phrased it as a decision about somebody else's life that I would be informing her of shortly. She said thank you like it was normal. I let myself believe that meant it was. I mourned the display shelf, then sat in the dry tub with my knees at my chin while Mika read the overlay like scripture. Chromotherapy mode, she said. Colored lights for rich people. It says restorative bathing profile. It says that because rich people need permission to sit in water. She nodded and tapped the panel. The bathroom glowed blue. Kuro tried to climb in, slipped, and pretended he had planned it. On the second attempt he made it, sat down in the exact center, and fit the tub better than I ever would, which I chose not to think about. Mika clapped. I did not, because I respected his dignity, and because I was checking the Arbiter's efficiency logs like a maniac. Domestic mode is not cheaper, the Arbiter said, unprompted, which meant it had been waiting for an opening. It wastes less mass. There is a difference, and you have never once cared about it before now. I care about it constantly. You care about resale value. This is new behavior. I contain multitudes. You contain a bathtub you cannot afford to replace. Simple household goods came out clean, compact, assembled. Complicated items still took hours, but the Arbiter now told me what to feed it before I guessed wrong. Metal here. Silicone there. Circuit boards for touch controls. Dense plastic for smooth finishes. It was like having a genius industrial designer trapped inside a bootleg prop and judging my trash, out loud, by name. The first night in the closet went like this. I shoved the loom its 90 centimeters and apologized to it, while Mika watched the entire operation from the entry step with the face of a person who had recently mentioned wheels. The bed came down out of the wall with a soft hydraulic sigh, the sound of furniture that costs more than the room it is standing in, and landed level on the tatami. She looked at it for a while. It's yours, I said. Where do you go? I pointed at the closet, which at that hour was still a closet, a 1-meter cavity, a door on a runner, and 11 years of manga stacked above head height in the exact order I had stopped being able to afford bookcases. Cockpit, I said. The futon pad cost me 2 dead cushions, a yoga mat I have never once used for yoga, and the foam off a delivery I never opened. 4 centimeters thick, which the Arbiter logged as within comfort tolerance and which I would describe as a sandwich. Then I took the door off its runner, because a door needs somewhere to open into, and I had run out of into. The door itself went into the tray the next morning and came back as 4-coat hooks, which is the most efficient grief I have ever processed. Getting in is a maneuver. You sit on the lip, rotate 90 degrees, and go under the shelf headfirst like a man loading himself into a torpedo tube, and from the knee down you simply remain in the room, permanently, as decor. The ceiling of the closet is 40 centimeters above my face, and it is not a ceiling. It is the black page, volumes 1 through 31, on a bracket I put up at 19 with a hammer and no measuring of any kind. It smells like paper, old glue, and the plastic sleeves I keep first printings in. If that bracket ever goes, I will be found under a complete run in near mint condition, which is, at minimum, on brand. The lights went out. The loom cyan leaked around the edge of the soundproof panel and laid one long stripe across the ceiling I could no longer see. The washer ticked on the entry step. Upstairs, the man who has been rearranging his furniture since the day I moved and rearranged some furniture. Hiro. Yeah. The bed is warm. That's the heated mat under it. I know. I read the manual. A pause of about 4 seconds. I liked reading the manual. That is the most expensive sentence anyone has ever said in this apartment. Hiro. Yeah. Your feet are in the room. Yes. Kuro is looking at them. I know. He is deciding. I am aware of what he is deciding. Kuro decided. I took it, because a man who has given away his own bed has already lost every argument available to him that day, and lay there with a cat on one ankle and a wall against both shoulders while the building ran its usual 11 o'clock inventory. A train, a scooter, a can dropping in a vending machine 2 streets over. Here is the thing nobody tells you about 3 years of living alone. The quiet in a room with one person in it is not quiet. It is a sound, a specific flat one, and you only find that out on the night it stops. The bed frame ticked when she turned over. It ticked again later, further into sleep. Kuro relocated twice, once off my ankle and once onto my chest, which involved climbing over my own feet, and which I have chosen to record as a review. Somewhere in the second hour, all of it stopped being noises I was tracking and turned into weather. I slept 9 hours on 4 centimeters of recycled cushion under a shelf I built at 19, with my feet sticking out into the room, and the honest truth is it was the best I had slept in 3 years, because for the first time the room outside it had somebody in it. By the 4th day, the apartment had mostly stopped rearranging itself hourly, which meant I had run out of excuses. "You said shoes," Mika said, from the doorway, already holding the one pair of my sandals that fit her. I had said shoes. Back on the night she was printed, at the window, I had promised her the convenience store, shoes, a hoodie, whatever she wanted. We had actually tried that same night. I remembered coaching her through it at the door. Walk normal. Don't answer strangers. We're doing society on easy mode tonight. Right up until none of my shoes fit her, and the one pair that came close gave her a blister in 4 minutes flat. So the trip had quietly folded into the renovation instead, the way most of my promises folded into whatever was loudest that week. She had not forgotten. She never forgot anything I said out loud, which I was starting to understand was less a feature and more a person. I fed the Loom scrap canvas, a dead phone case, and the sole of a shoe I'd blown out running from the vending machine incident, and it gave me back a pair that actually fit her, snow white to match, nothing on purpose and everything on accident. She put them on sitting on the entry step, tail curled around one ankle for balance, and stood up like she'd been doing it her whole short life. The convenience store was 4 minutes away and felt like 4 hours of planning. I made her practice walking normally, which she was already better at than me. I made her practice not answering direct questions from strangers, which she found hilarious. I made her practice looking bored near the magazine rack, which she performed with the focused intensity of someone who had never once been bored. Then, at the door, I stopped. "One more thing," I said, and fed the Loom a scrap of dark canvas and a cracked bicycle helmet liner, and asked for something I had been turning over in my head since the ears first twitched at the ceiling water stains. It took 11 minutes. Mika stood over the output tray in her new shoes with her hands behind her back, guessing. A bag. No, a bag for Kuro. Why would Kuro need a bag? Transport, she said, as though I were the strange one in the room. The tray opened. A cap. Plain, dark, lined on the inside where her ears would sit, snug enough to hold without hurting, loose enough she could pull it low. "For me?" she said, delighted, already reaching. "For your ears," I said. "People are going to look. I'd rather they looked at a hat." "Why?" "Because ears are a conversation," I said, "and I don't want to have a conversation at 9 at night in a shop that sells egg sandwiches. You have conversations. You talk to the Arbiter for 6 hours a day. That's different. It is contractually obligated to listen." She thought about that the way she thinks about a number, and went looking for the hole in it, which she found immediately, because there was one. "There are ears in the magazines," she said. "On the covers. On the little figures in the window of the shop with the crane machines. Kuro has ears. Kuro has cat ears. I have cat ears. You have cat ears on a person," I said, and heard myself arrive at the edge of something with no plan for the drop. "Why?" she said again. "Not pushing." She asks a question the second time exactly the way she asked it the first time. Same volume, same face, no pressure applied anywhere, which is the most effective interrogation technique I have ever been subjected to, and which she has never once known she was using. I opened my mouth. There was the front of a sentence in it, and nothing behind the front. I have started plenty of sentences without knowing how they ended. That was the first time I could feel that the end existed, somewhere, fully formed, and that I was not going to go and get it. Because I said so, I said, which was a worse answer than I meant it to be, and I heard how bad it was the second it left my mouth, and did not take it back anyway. Just wear it when we're out. Please. Please, she repeated. Yes. You do not say please. You apologize to the machine and to the toilet, and you say please to nobody. I did not have anything to set down next to that. She turned it over in her hands, testing the fit against her own ears without a mirror, pushing a thumb into the lining where the cradle was, trusting the shape of it the way she trusted most things I gave her. Then she put it on, tucked one white strand behind an ear that vanished under the brim, and looked at me like she'd just agreed to a rule she didn't understand and had decided to keep anyway, because I'd asked. I reached over and pulled the brim down a centimeter. She let me. Then she pulled it down another centimeter herself, which was worse, and about which I said nothing at all. Does it look right? She asked. Yes, I said, and that was the only entirely true sentence I contributed to the whole exchange. Okay, she said. Society on easy mode. I didn't explain further. I told myself there wasn't anything to explain yet, that it was just sensible, that a 9-square-meter apartment full of printed miracles didn't need a second one walking around uncovered where anyone could see. I did not examine that reasoning very hard. I filed it next to the other reasoning I wasn't examining and told myself the pile could wait. We bought canned coffee, a rice ball she insisted on choosing by wrapper color, and nothing else, and walked home past Mrs. Ito's recycling bags stacked by her door, and nobody looked at either of us twice, because a hat on a girl is the least interesting thing Tokyo has ever seen. That night, I logged the day the way I logged everything now, out of habit. Bed, given away. Shoes, delivered. Cap, printed, worn, unexplained. My sister's chat, still waiting empty since the vending machine incident, still not answered. 2 decisions about Mika's life, made generously, both of them already finished before she got a vote. I noticed the second one. I told myself I'd examine the first one later. I did not examine the first one later. The lock turned before I heard the footsteps, because my sister had a key and 22 years of not needing to knock. I had exactly enough time to think the word no before the door opened on Mika sitting cross-legged in the middle of the floor, cap off because we were home, ears fully deployed, teaching Kuro to high-five for a piece of dried fish. 9H stopped in the doorway with a grocery bag in one hand and her work blazer still on. Nobody said anything for a length of time that felt like a fiscal quarter. Hiro, she said, very carefully, the way you'd address a man standing near a gas leak with a lit cigarette. Who is that? Mika, entirely unbothered, lifted a hand. Hello? I'm Mika. Hello. Mika, 9H said, on autopilot, and then rebooted. Hiro, kitchen. Now. The kitchen was 1 meter from the floor Mika was sitting on, which meant this was less a private conference and more 2 people whisper yelling next to a girl with excellent hearing and no reason to pretend she couldn't hear it. Start talking, 9H said. Every old answer lined up in my head, ready to go. A cosplayer, a roommate, a friend crashing for the week. All of them would have taken 30 seconds and bought me nothing but a longer, worse conversation 2 weeks from now when one of them fell apart under its own weight. I had built an entire career out of the 30-second answer. It had never once actually solved anything. It had just moved the problem to a Tuesday I hadn't reached yet. So I did the least me thing possible. I worked. Sit down, I said. I'm going to show you the business. Not the loom. Not the arbiter. Not the word tier, which I still hadn't said out loud to anyone who wasn't already living in this room. I pulled out the resale ledger first, the actual real one, the spreadsheet with real dates and real buyer handles and real bank transfers, and walked her through 11 weeks of it from the first 30,000 yen impulse buy to the burner accounts to the collector who'd offered 40 for a card that had existed less than a day. Listings, shipping receipts, a locker rental history that made me look, at minimum, extremely committed to a hobby. She didn't sit for the first 20 minutes. She stood over the low table with her blazer still on and read the top of the screen the way she reads a document somebody has asked her to sign. From the beginning, she said. Not the interesting part. The beginning. Week 1 was 4 rows long, and all 4 were humiliating. 30,000 yen out for a dusty screen-used prop. 6 days before 200,000 yen of rent. She put one finger on that row, on my screen, and left it there a while. Keep going. Row 2 was the first card, sold in 20 minutes to a man who wanted photographs of the corner where first. Corner where, she said. On a card that had existed for, she checked the timestamp, because she always checks the timestamp. An afternoon. It photographed very well. Row 3 was a station locker, an envelope, and a number small enough that she read it twice, which is what non-HME does instead of mocking you. Then the accounts. 3 of them, built in one night, which had taken longer than building the cards. Why 3? Volume. One account moving that much inventory gets flagged. By who? The platform. So you were hiding. From the platform. Hero. From everyone. Obviously from everyone. I've been hiding from everyone for 11 weeks, which is why you're standing in my kitchen at midnight. That was the first true sentence of the night that cost me anything, and it moved her exactly 1 step. She took the blazer off and sat down on my floor. Somewhere in there Mika set a cup of tea by her knee, unasked, and went back to the entry step. Weeks 2 through 5 went faster because the rows got better, and the rows getting better was its own problem. Commons bought by weight from bins nobody respected, going in. Sealed high rarity, singles going out. Buyer handles I could recite, like a class roll. Every row provable. Every row real. Then she stopped. She had scrolled back up, which nobody does. 1 finger on week 3, 1 finger on week 7, 30 rows apart. This one, she said. And this one. Same item, same description, down to the wording I'd been too lazy to rewrite the second time. Same hand-painted run number in both photographs. An Iron Vanguard anniversary chase part, 11 in the world, and mine was number 7 twice. It's a limited run, I said. There's more than one out there. There are 11, and your own listing says so. You sold number 7 in week 3, and number 7 again 4 weeks later. So either one of those men is holding a fake. It's not a fake. That came out harder than anything else I said, because it is the one accusation I have never been able to stand, and I heard how insane it sounded. A man defending the authenticity of an object he personally invented. Then where did the second one come from? There it was, the actual question, at midnight, next to a grocery bag. I had the whole answer sitting behind my teeth, fully assembled, and the shape of the rest of it behind that, the part with Mika in it, the part that ends with my sister knowing the girl on my entry step, came out of the same tray as the card. I got as far as, because and stopped, in front of the one person alive who can hear the gear change. Because you what? I stood up instead of answering, which is a tell, and she let me, which is the mercy nobody warns you about. Then, because the spreadsheet wasn't going to explain the soundproof thing standing in the middle of my floor, I did the harder version. I walked her shelf by shelf through the actual room. That's an Iron Vanguard desert frame knee actuator, 3rd production run, worth more broken than most people's rent. I picked up the next one. That's a printed servo brace. I'll get to that. That's the Black Page limited box set, the one Mika's tail knocked over, still worth full retail because nobody ever opens the shrink wrap. I gestured at the toppled binders by the wall. Pocket Beasts commons, mostly worthless individually, worth a small apartment collectively, currently on the floor because a print run last week shook the shelf apart. And that, she said, meaning the soundproof shape behind the futon, the one with a low cyan glow bleeding out around its edges even now, is what? It's a printer. I make the parts. Some of them. Most of them. She looked at it the way she'd looked at the ledger, filing it under real without asking it to explain itself, which was its own kind of mercy and its own kind of terrifying. She did not ask what it made them out of. I did not offer. It took 3 hours total. I did not perform it. I did not make it funny, which was its own kind of horror, because funny was the other trapdoor I usually used to end conversations before they got real. I just told her the true, provable, financial half of my life, in order, out loud, while she sat with her arms crossed and slowly uncrossed them somewhere around hour 2. She asked real questions, the kind I hadn't braced for. How much a first-run screen-accurate command chair actually resold for, and whether I'd been robbed on the deal. Where the coin lockers were, specifically, because she wanted to know if I'd been meeting strangers somewhere she considered safe. Whether the tax office had any idea any of this existed, which was the one question that made me physically wince, because the honest answer was a spreadsheet tab I had been actively avoiding since roughly week 2. You built an entire business, she said, somewhere around hour 2.5, in the tone of someone recalculating a person she thought she already understood. By yourself. While pretending to still be unemployed. I am still unemployed. This is a different category of problem. It's a company. It's a felony-adjacent hobby with good margins. Hero. Fine. It might be a company. She picked up one of the shipping receipts, read the buyer's handle, and set it back down exactly where she'd found it, squared to the edge of the table, which was the most her gesture I had ever seen from anyone in my family. 9H me did not do anything by half measures once she'd decided to take it seriously, including apparently auditing my life at midnight on zero warning. This is real, she said. Not a question. It's real. You've been doing this for months. Alone. Mostly alone. Her eyes went to the doorway, where Mika had migrated to the entry step and was very obviously not eavesdropping, while extremely eavesdropping. And her. I had one sentence ready, the only one I trusted myself not to wreck. She lives here. She's not going anywhere, and she's not a secret I'm keeping from you to hurt you. She's a secret I'm keeping from everyone, because it's not safe yet for it not to be one. The panel behind the futon chose that exact moment to chime, a soft 2-note idle tone it made when a print queue emptied, and killed the sound with my whole hand flat against the casing before Nahmi could ask what a resale ledger needed a chime for. What was that? The fridge. Your fridge chimes. It's an expensive fridge. She looked at me the way she looked at receipts that didn't add up, decided the fridge was a hill she didn't have the hours left to die on, and let it go. 9H me looked at me for a long moment, the tired older sibling look, the one that meant she was doing math on whether pushing harder would get her anything except a worse answer. You know I'm going to worry regardless, she said. Whether you tell me things or not. That part isn't negotiable, it comes with the sister subscription. I know. But I'd rather worry about something real than worry about nothing and be right too. That was, I would think later, the most accurate description of our entire relationship anyone had ever produced in one sentence, and she'd done it standing in my kitchen holding a grocery bag she'd been carrying for 3 hours, unprompted, well past midnight. She didn't push harder. I stopped texting because the rent receipt wasn't an answer, she said, apropos of nothing, halfway to the main room. You know that, right? Clean isn't the same as honest. I know that now. You should have known it before I had to let myself in to find out. She stood up, walked past me into the main room, and crouched down in front of Mika instead. Have you eaten? She said. Mika blinked. I had rice. That's not eating, that's surviving. 9H me held up the grocery bag like evidence. I bought too much for one person out of habit. Sit. Do you also believe the fridge chimes? Mika asked, with total sincerity, settling in across from her. 9H me's eyes cut to me for exactly 1 second. Does it? It's an expensive fridge, I said again, with less conviction the second time. Mika accepted this the way she accepted most things, completely, and moved on to eating with the seriousness of someone taking a practical exam. I stood in my own kitchen and watched my sister, who had spent 11 weeks convinced I was either dying or committing several categories of fraud, feed a girl she'd known for 4 minutes because the girl looked thin and the fridge looked worse. Mika answered every follow-up question about herself with total honesty filtered through zero context. "Where are you from?" Non-HME asked, somewhere between the first container and the second. "Here, I think." Non-HME waited for the rest of it. There was no rest of it. "Here as in Tokyo." "Here as in here," Mika said, and ate more rice, and that was the complete answer. I watched my sister turn that over once, file it in the folder every adult in this country keeps, the one marked "doesn't like talking about where she grew up," and move on out of manners. "What do you do for work?" "Quality control, and I am learning laundry." "Quality control of what?" "Everything he sends out." Mika did not look up. "He photographs badly, and he packs worse." "That's true," I said, from a kitchen where nobody had asked me anything. "It's true," Nunhme agreed, and something in her shoulders came down 2 centimeters, because she had just found the only other person in Tokyo willing to audit me to my face. "How long have you known him?" "Since I opened my eyes." The bed frame ticked as Kuro repositioned, and a train went past 2 streets over, and I stood there holding a dish towel. "That's an unusual way to say it," Non-HME said. "It is accurate," Mika said, pleasantly, which is the most dangerous register she owns. "She means." Non-HME lifted one finger without looking at me. "I'm asking her." I shut up. It was that or fill the gap, and filling gaps was how I would lose the whole night. "Was it bad?" Non-HME said, quieter. "Wherever you were before." Mika considered it the way she considers a number, checking it for a hole. "There was no before," she said. I watched my sister hear something that had not been said, and landed somewhere ordinary and bad. One of the several thousand versions of that story a city this size runs every year. She decided, visibly, not to make a stranger say it out loud over rice. She took Mika's bowl without permission, filled it again, and set it back down. Non-HME, mercifully, processed all of it as the eccentric shorthand of someone new to the city rather than the literal truth it was. Freelance, recently moved, connected to the collector world somehow, living here because the arrangement worked for both of them. All true, none of it the whole truth. I let every gap sit exactly where it landed and didn't fill a single one. When Non-HME finally stood to leave, she caught my sleeve on the way past me at the door, out of Mika's eyeline. "Are you happy?" she asked. Not "are you safe?" Not "are you in danger?" The other question, the one I hadn't braced for. I opened my mouth. Nothing honest came out fast enough, and the silence went on a beat too long to still count as an answer. "I'll take that as a work in progress," she said, and left before I found one. On the landing outside, I heard her stop and say something polite to the upstairs neighbor, the one who'd been dragging furniture across his floor like a man cursed to rearrange chairs forever. I didn't catch the words. I caught the tone, which was the tone people used right before mentioning a smell, a noise, or a stranger they'd noticed coming and going. She texted from the stairwell before I'd even locked the door. "Sunday. I'm bringing more groceries. Feed her properly this time." I looked at the message, then at Mika curled on the fold-down bed with Kuro already claiming the good half of it, and understood that something had just changed shape without my permission, and I didn't mind even a little. For the first time since the eviction notice, I hadn't hidden, hadn't joked my way out, hadn't found a trapdoor. I just stood there and worked through it, out loud, the hard way, and it had cost me 3 hours and the truth about a chiming fridge, and it had bought me a sister who was coming back on Sunday instead of one who'd stopped calling. I filed that under lessons I was apparently capable of learning, given sufficient pressure and 0 other options, and went to bed in my closet feeling more like an adult than I had any right to, half listening to the washer humming on the entry step and wondering, for the first time, whether the whole building could hear it too. The landlord's note came taped to my door at 8 in the morning, which in Landlord language means someone complained before sunrise. Noise, please advise. Underneath, in smaller writing, like he was embarrassed to ask. Also, occupancy is listed as 1-1. Please confirm. I peeled it off and read it twice, standing in the hallway in one sock, while Mika's voice drifted out behind me asking Kuro why the ceiling made a sound like a whale having a good day. That was the loom. For in the morning, mid-print, deep in a domestic fabrication cycle that needed the extra torque, humming low enough that I'd stopped hearing it weeks ago. The man directly below me, apparently, had not stopped hearing it. He'd started writing times down. The note listed 3 of them, formatted like a police report. For minutes, 12 seconds. For minutes, 47 seconds. 5 minutes, 30 seconds. The upstairs neighbor, the furniture dragger, the man who rearranged his entire floor plan at 2 in the morning on what appeared to be a personal vendetta against silence, had filed exactly 0 complaints in his life. It was the quiet man downstairs with a pen who finally broke first. I found that funnier than I should have, given it was also my problem. Building maintenance again? Mika asked, because that was still our cover story for anything I couldn't explain out loud, and she'd started saying it with a straight face that scared me a little. Structural review, I said, which felt more honest. The occupancy line was the part that actually mattered. My lease said 1 tenant. I had, as of several weeks ago, 1 tenant, 1 cat printed from a novelty plush and a ramen bowl, and 1 humanoid who ate real food, used the bathroom, and generated an amount of hallway noise that a single depressed NET never had. Mrs. Ito on the 3rd floor had noticed 2 sets of footsteps on the stairs and started leaving an extra rice ball outside my door on Tuesdays, unprompted, the way she'd once kept me in aluminium for a week just by being nosy and generous in the same breath. The building, it turned out, paid attention. It always had. I'd just never given it anything worth noticing before. I fed the loom everything I could scrounge that wasn't currently load-bearing. Foam packing, a dead subwoofer, 3 pairs of shoes I'd stopped wearing, and asked for the boring version of a miracle. Not a weapon, not a card. Sound. Vibration isolation deck. Compact everything. The panel's already handling half of this, the Arbiter said, before I'd even asked. It absorbs what travels sideways. It was never built to stop what travels down. You've been living inside the part of the problem it fixed and ignoring the part it can't. So, I need a new panel. You need a deck. Panels are for walls. Try to keep your acoustics vocabulary current. The deck came out as a low platform, springs and dense foam under a thin metal skin, sized exactly for the loom's footprint. I wrestled it under the machine at 2 in the afternoon, Mika holding the far corner and providing a running commentary on my form that I did not ask for and could not disprove. The hum dropped by half before I'd even finished bolting the last corner down, and the 4 in the morning whale noise became a 4 in the morning fridge noise, which felt like a genuine miracle disguised as acoustic engineering. Then the panel went storage full at me for the 2nd time in my life, and I had to stand in front of a machine holding 11 kilos of banked everything and decide what my apartment was allowed to become tonight. The isolation deck, or the 2nd futon pad Mika had been asking about for a week, so she didn't have to share the fold-down bed's mattress with Kuro's opinions about personal space. You could also simply print the futon first and let the neighbor file a 2nd complaint, the Arbiter offered. That's not a solution. It's a solution. It's a solution you find morally inconvenient. Those are different categories. Not both tonight. Morally inconvenient or otherwise. There was a version of me, several months younger, who had once spent 2 years unable to choose between 2 color variants of the same figure. I chose the deck. The futon could wait a night. The noise complaint could not. It was, I noticed somewhere around the 3rd bolt, the 3rd time in a week I'd made a decision about her comfort and finished it before she got a vote. The bed, the cap, and now a mattress she'd asked for out loud, postponed by a man who'd already decided what mattered more. I noticed it clearly enough to feel bad about it, and not clearly enough to do anything different. Mrs. Ito caught me in the stairwell the next morning, watering the sad potted fern that lived outside the third-floor door like a self-appointed sentry. The fern was not hers. She had told me that once, unprompted, in the tone of a woman clarifying a legal matter. It belonged to the tenant who had lived in the third-floor corner unit before the tenant who lived there now, and he had left it in the hallway on the day he moved out, and nobody had ever come back for it. She had watered it every second day since. 9 years, by her own count, of a stay that was supposed to last until somebody claimed it, and it looked exactly as bad as that sentence sounds, and exactly as alive. She had opinions about all of us, delivered without malice, the way you'd describe weather. The man upstairs had been dragging furniture across that floor since before I moved in, and would be dragging it after I left. The man below me was perfectly nice and wrote everything down, including, once, the arrival times of a delivery driver over a fortnight, results presented to nobody. Your friend, she said, meaning Mika, whom she had met exactly twice and approved of both times, mostly because Mika complimented her recycling sorting with what Mrs. Ito clearly interpreted as genuine enthusiasm, and was actually genuine enthusiasm, because Mika found everything about ordinary Tokyo life fascinating in a way I'd stopped being capable of around age 15. She's staying, yes? Not just visiting. She's staying. Good. This building needs younger people who say good morning. She resumed watering. Tell her the third-floor vending machine gives free drinks if you hit it twice on the left side. Don't tell the landlord I told you that. I told Mika. She hit it twice on the left side that afternoon and came home with a free can of something bright orange and mildly threatening, radiating the specific joy of someone who had just discovered a cheat code for a machine she hadn't even known was gameable. And I filed the whole exchange under evidence that the building had quietly decided to keep her, one small kindness at a time, faster than any paperwork I could file on her behalf. The occupancy line took longer than the noise did. I called the landlord's office expecting a fight and got a form instead. Adding a second listed occupant meant a name, a signature, a jump in the monthly total that would eat most of what the commission trickle currently brought in, and technically a background check I had no intention of letting anyone run on a person who did not legally exist a month ago, which was 11 fewer months than the usual paperwork allowed for. I sat with the form open on my laptop for a full evening, cursor blinking in the name field, and did the thing I was apparently good at now. I thought about the easy version first. The easy version was cash. Slip the landlord extra under the existing one-occupant listing, keep her off every form that could ever be cross-referenced, keep her folded into my life the way I folded everything else, safe and small and entirely managed by me. I could build her a version of this apartment so comfortable she'd never need the stairs, never meet Mrs. Ito, never generate a single data point anywhere outside these 9 square meters. I could call it protection. I had gotten very good, this month, at calling things protection. The washer finished its cycle somewhere in the middle of that, and Mika came in off the entry step with an armful of my shirts folded into rectangles more honest than anything I have ever produced, and I closed the laptop halfway on reflex, which is not a thing I decided to do. You're still on the paper, she said. Not a question. Structural review. She accepted it, because they were the same 2 words I'd used on her about the note on the door, and I listened to myself use the same lie twice on the same person in the same week, and did nothing about it. She put the shirts on the shelf and stood there a second, tail moving slow, doing the thing she does when she has decided to ask for something and is checking the price of it first. Is the futon this week? Soon. Okay, she said, immediately, the way she accepts everything. And then, because she genuinely could not help it, Mrs. Ito is wrong about the second floor machine. Only the third one does it. You tested both. 4 times each, she said, with the dignity of a woman presenting findings, and went to bed. The panel came up on its own once she was down, cyan bleeding around the edge of the soundproofing, the way it does when it has been idle long enough to get bored, if that is a thing available to it. You have looked at the same field for 4 hours, the Arbiter said. It is a name field. It does not get wider. I'm thinking. You are not thinking. You are waiting for the form to change. A pause, the manufactured kind. There is a second option. Would you like it stated once, out loud, or would you prefer to keep arriving at it privately every 11 minutes? State it. Pay the difference in cash. The lease stays as written. Occupancy remains 1. No name is entered, no signature exists, and no search anywhere returns a result, because there is nothing for a search to return. You're recommending it. I am describing it. You have never once heard the difference, and I have never once stopped saying it. Can you make her papers? I said, because I had been carrying the question for a week, and it was 11 at night, and the only other thing in the room with an opinion was a panel. No. You made a bathtub. A residence card is an object. The part of a residence card that works is a row in a registry in a building I have no route to. And a card that does not match its row is worse than no card at all. In the specific way a good forgery is worse than a bad one. A bad one gets you a board refusal. A good one gets you a phone call. A pause. You are asking me to fabricate a fact. I fabricate mass. Noted. You have asked me this before in a different shape. I haven't. You asked me for a cap, the Arbiter said. Then it did the thing it does, which is put a problem into columns whether or not anybody requested columns. Option 1 creates records. A lease amendment, a landlord's copy, a management company's copy, a name on a mailbox, and a monthly figure in a ledger. 5 surfaces. Each one is somewhere a stranger can find her without trying. And option 2. Option 2 creates none of that. Option 2 runs on one man's discretion, renewed monthly, in perpetuity, with nothing anywhere stating she was ever permitted to be in the room. If he sells the building, it ends. If anyone above him ever reconciles a figure, it ends quickly, and it ends while she is inside the apartment. A pause. Both are survivable. Only one of them is survivable by her. Meaning what? Meaning that under option 2, she cannot be found, and also cannot be argued for, because the argument would be a document, and there would not be one. I am not weighting those against each other. I have no weights. It is not a category I hold. I said no out loud. I want that recorded accurately, because it is the only part of this I am sure about. I did not decide it quietly and file it. No to the cash. No to the envelope every month. No to the version where she lives here for the rest of her life on the good mood of a man with a clipboard. She didn't wake up. Her ear moved. That is the entire audience that decision ever had. Log, the Arbiter said. You could have said all that before I opened the form. You would have priced it anyway. Pricing a thing you are not going to buy is most of what you do with an afternoon. The panel dimmed to standby. For the record, the option you have refused stays available and gets cheaper against the other one every month, and I will not raise it again unless you do. I looked at the form again. Then at Mika, asleep against Kuro on whichever half of the bed he'd left her, snow hair loose across the pillow, one ear twitching at some dream. I filled in the form honestly. Her name, the one she'd chosen for herself in the first 10 minutes of existing, printed in my own handwriting because she was asleep and I didn't want to wake her over paperwork. I signed it. I paid the increase, which meant the commission line would need to stop being a hobby sometime soon and start being an actual answer to a real number. I dropped the form in the landlord's box myself instead of mailing it, so there'd be no version of this where I quietly changed my mind at 3 in the morning. The box is on the ground floor, which meant going down past the 3rd floor landing, past a fern that nobody owns, 9 years alive on one woman's habit and no paperwork of any kind, which is the cash option with leaves on it. I looked at it from that angle the whole way down and posted the form anyway. I didn't tell my sister. Clean wasn't the same as honest, she'd said, and I filed the form under things I'd explain to her eventually, which was its own small, familiar lie. It wasn't the same as the cash and cover story version. It cost more, on paper and otherwise. It meant a document existed somewhere with her name on it, tied to an address, tied to me. It was also the first time I'd let her exist somewhere outside this room without deciding, on her behalf, that hiding was the safer shape for her life to take. I noticed, filling it out, that I'd wanted to choose the other version so badly it had scared me a little. A very comfortable thing to be kept inside of, and call the whole thing protection. I hadn't done it, not this time. That felt like it should count for something, even if wanting to do it clearly still did too. Mika woke up around midnight, found me still at the laptop, and read the confirmation email over my shoulder without asking. I'm on the lease, she said, testing the words. You're on the lease. She was quiet for a second, tail curling once around her own ankle. Is that a big thing? It's a real thing, I said. Which is bigger than a big one, most days. She seemed to accept that as sufficient, climbed back onto her half of the bed, and left me sitting there with a signed form, a quieter ceiling, and the distinct feeling that I'd just made the harder choice on purpose for the first time in my life, and hadn't hated it. Right up until I did the rent math again and realized the deck, the lease, and the futon I still owed her were all coming out of a commission business that currently ran on vibes and whatever sold this week.